baby. Don't stop now. Let your hair down, baby. We ain't going to heaven no how. I'm ready to burn,
May
baby.
3rd, Monday, May 3rd, 2021, public hearing for the City of Tampa's Architectural Review Commission. Welcome, everyone. I'm Susan Claus-Smith, and tonight I'm acting as chair of the commission. If you are here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation, and your project should be presented in the following order: the site plan, the exterior elevations, any architectural details, and wall sections. Following your presentation, the staff will present their staff report, and then we will ask for public comment. Following your presentation, the commissioners will be asking questions in the same order as your presentation. For those of you speaking for or against the project, please state and spell your name clearly. And your project time will be limited to 3 minutes. So take some time now to summarize your comments, because those 3 minutes go by very quickly. Following the public comment, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal, and then the public hearing will be closed. The only comments which will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the commissioners. Once the public hearing is closed, the commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based on the city ordinance, chapter 27 of the city's zoning code, the design guidelines, the Secretary of Interior standards, the Historic Preservation Development Review comments, and the testimony given at the public hearing. Please note that the ARC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and silence your cell phones, and I'd like to move on and allow my fellow commissioners to introduce themselves, and we'll start from my left tonight.
Good evening, my name is Stephen Sutton. I'm a registered architect. I also do the architectural story. There we go again. Good evening, my name is Stephen Sutton. I am a registered architect, and I hold the architectural historian chair.
I'm Susan Claus-Smith. I'm an architect, and I am the vice chair acting as the chair tonight.
I am Brent Taylor. I'm a general contractor. I'm holding the building contractor position.
My name is Dan Myers. I'm a registered architect, and I believe I have an architect's position.
And tonight we also have staff with us. We have Dennis Fernandez, Ron Vila, Beverly Jervasak, sorry Beverly, and attorney Kamaria Pettis-Mackel. And I believe we're ready for a reading of the minutes. So if we could go ahead and have a motion to enter the minutes from the April 5th and April 7th hearings.
Having no comment myself, I move that the meeting minutes for the Architectural Review Commission public hearing of the meeting date Monday, April 5th, 2021, and Wednesday, April 7th, 2021, be accepted as presented.
I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye, and indicate so by raising your hands. Aye.
Aye.
Nay. Seeing none, the motion passes. And then Dennis Fernandez will go ahead with announcements.
Good evening, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Welcome to this evening's public hearing. To start with, I will enter in the list of administrative approvals for April into the record. Should have a copy of those in your packet. Moving on, I did want to just bring to everyone's attention that we will be having another public hearing on Wednesday, May the 5th, to review the remainder of our May cycle of applications. So that will be at 6 p.m. and we have verified a quorum for that meeting. Lastly, I did want to just take a moment to congratulate both Commissioners Sutton and our Vice Chair this evening, who have both just been reappointed to their second term. Commissioner Sutton being reappointed through Mayor Casker, and Commissioner Klaus Smith being appointed through City Council. So thank you very much for your service, and we look forward to working with you for the next couple years.
Thank you.
And with that, we're going to move on to our conflict of interest and ex parte communication disclosure, and our legal counsel, Kamaria Pettis-Mackel, will lead that discussion.
Good evening, Commissioners. Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. Will the Commissioners please state whether or not they have any conflicts of interest regarding any of the items that are listed on the agenda?
Have
I have
none.
none.
Thank you. Will the Commissioners also please state on the record whether or not they've had any ex parte communications regarding any of the items that are listed?
I have none.
None.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, I'm staff with Historic Preservation. Under continuations, we have two that are reflected on tonight's agenda, which is, the first one is ARC 20-463 for the address of 1314 South DeSoto Avenue. And the next continuation is ARC 21-106 for the address of 703 South Newport Avenue. Both of those have been requested by the agent to continue to the June 7th, 2021 public hearing at 6 p.m. And if we could get one motion for both of those, will be sufficient.
If we could please have a motion brought forward for the continuations.
I move for continuation of ARC. Commissioner Sutton, can you turn your microphone off, please? It turned off itself. Excuse me. I move for the continuations of ARC 20-463 located at 1314 South DeSoto Avenue, and ARC 21-106 located at 703 South Newport Avenue to the June 7th, 2021 hearing.
I second the motion.
All in favor indicate aye and raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay, seeing none, the motion carries.
At this time, we're ready for the swear-in. Everybody that wishes to testify, including staff, please stand up and raise your right hand. Ms. Juzak will swear us in.
Please solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be providing this evening is the truth and nothing but the truth.
Moving to the first case this evening, which is ARC 21-141. This is for the address of 806 South Fremont Avenue. This is in the Hyde Park Historic District. The primary structure is a contributing structure that dates back to 1924. The zoning attached to that parcel is RS50. The request in front of you this evening is for new construction, which is in addition to the primary structure with site improvements. As we go through the photo essay and the presentation this evening, some of you will notice that this looks familiar. There's some previous action on this case. This was in front of you in March. At that time, there was some outstanding comments, and it was continued to tonight's public hearing. The agents and the owners have addressed most of those issues, and it'll be prevalent on their presentation. At this time, if we could go to the photo presentation. Does everybody have the Sanborn map on their map?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Starting with the 1929 Sanborn map, property in question is in the highlighted shaded area. This is 806 South Fremont. To the north, you have a cross street of Inman that dies into the crosstown. To the south, you have Bristol, and to the east, you have Packwood. There is an alley that runs north and south behind the property. At the time, in 1929, you saw this was a two-story frame structure with an accessory structure to the rear. This is looking at the front elevation from Inman. from Fremont. Moving around, you see the single stacked windows. This is the north elevation. Moving to the south elevation, you see a little bit here, and then what was an addition some time ago towards the rear. This is a close-up of the window. You see the casing here, the header and the sill, and the 1/1 window. This house has a couple of different bracket details. This is the bracket that's over the front brow, over the front door. This is the second bracket that is on the gable ends of the two-story structure. This shows the lap siding and how it dives into the corner boards. You also could pick up on some of the, this was a sprayed material that was that covered the lap siding. This was applied probably in the 50s or 60s or sometime. In working with the owners as they go through the new construction, they're going to see if this could be removed and the luster of the lap siding be reestablished. Some of the surrounding properties. This is the abutting property to the north. This is looking at the abutting properties to the south and directly across the street. So you get a feeling of the vernacular in the neighborhood. That concludes the photo presentation. At this time, I'll have their professional address the board at the podium.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. We want to thank you for allowing us to be here again to review some of these changes that we're making. You've already seen the photograph. This is what we're starting with.
Excuse me,
Sir, yes.
Kamaria Pettis-Malcolm from the legal department. Can you please introduce your name, state your
Oh,
name
I'm
on the
sorry, I
record?
forgot. My name is Bill Cutler. I'm with Eclectic Drafting and Design Incorporated. I was hired by the owners to help them with their addition. The front facade is not going to be changing much at all except for the color and removing of the sprayed material as Ron had mentioned. The site plan is also not changing very much in the front part of the residence. The infill back here will be far enough away from the existing two-story garage in accordance with the fire codes, so we won't be encroaching on that. With the front facade, but the only difference you see here...
Excuse me,
Oh,
would you
sorry.
mind rotating those so those are
I'm sorry.
actually... Thank you.
That would help, wouldn't it? Okay. With the addition at the back, the roof will pop up just a little bit. And in this kind of view, it's more prominent than a three-dimensional view, which you'll see shortly. But no other changes on the front. The other elevations, such as the side elevation here, the east elevation, you now see the difference in the existing versus the new. We have a new delineation line there. We pushed that wall back 6 inches to make sure there's no continuation of the plane of the existing home. We kept the dormer as small as possible so that it's not obtrusive. The rear elevation, oops. In the rear elevation, we see the columns, which are square, not round. We have the brackets matching the existing. And we've also addressed the design of the balustrade of the guardrail, trying to make it more substantial looking and more period oriented. You know, for the north elevation, we added a mud room, and the entrance there is helping with the breakup of the new from the old. And we rearranged some of the windows just to make sure that there's definite separation from the existing from the new. And then for a perspective to show what it would look like from a roughly 6-foot high person, across the street. That peak of the roof does show up a little bit, but with the tree in front, we're convinced it's not going to be noticeable. From the other side, it's clear that there's a dormer there, but it's pretty far in the back, and we're not convinced that's going to be detracting from the main part of the house, which is in the front, and that's the part we're not changing. Other architectural details that don't show up in this very clearly because it's a small picture is the soffit's all going to be removed. It's aluminum soffit now. That's going to be replaced with a more appropriate construction. And one possibility is to have rafter tails exposed, much like this here. It's hard to see maybe, but right in here, we're going to try to pinpoint what the original looked like, so it's easier to understand the period of the house. For the wall sections, we're going to keep the first floor elevation matching the existing. It'll be elevated, while brick veneer matching the brick. It's a painted brick on the house now, and wood siding to match, and the trim to match the existing as well. We're not going to try to change anything there. The owners made it very clear from the beginning they didn't want to add anything to the house that detracted from its original appearance. They liked how the house was originally built. And this is what we're trying to achieve. Everything here we're showing is to match the exterior as much as we possibly can. In the rear patio, underneath the balcony, we'll have a little conversation area there. It includes a gas fireplace, would be side venting. We didn't want a traditional chimney going all the way up, which we thought would detract from the house. There's already a masonry construction of that type on that side, and we thought that should be the focal point. So this is going to be mostly for conversational purposes, and therefore we pushed it inside so it's not projecting outside of the plane of the house. This particular design is more contemporary, which we're not using, but it shows the idea of a focal point for conversation on the exterior. And on the first floor plan, we now have the delineation here. We've pushed that wall back 6 inches. We've pushed the fireplace in and cleaned up some of the patio here so it's not as obvious. And for the second floor, the continuation of the 6-inch dimension continues up there as well. And as already been demonstrated, there is this unusual surface material on the siding, which is going to be either removed entirely, covered over with newer wood siding, or replaced with new wood siding. One way or another, that will be gone. No one liked that from the beginning. There was never any discussion on that, whether that should stay or we're just getting rid of it. In the end, the point of all this is to make sure that the new addition matches so closely the original, and there's enough delineation along the sides that everyone's going to see a house that may have been built that way rather than some modern element added to the project. And I believe that's all we need to present at this point in time. Thank you very much.
All right, if that concludes your presentation, we will now move on to the staff report. Sorry.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila. Staff's finding that this application is consistent with the Hyde Park Design Guidelines. On page 4 of your staff report, we do have some conditions that were associated with this request. The agent went through the majority of them, but there were some that need additional discussion this evening. There are implementing a ramp on the north side of the structure. If we could get additional information on the materials and exactly how that is going to be fastened to a primary structure. The railing and the columns on the rear addition have been modified. If he could talk about that a little bit more in detail as well. The original railing kind of wrapped around the south elevation, and through this evening's presentation, they modified that and they brought it more in keeping with the simplicity of the structure. Also, the windows and doors are a big component of the success of this project. If they could illustrate or if they had selected the materials and doors at this time to put that onto the record. And then lastly, he touched upon the soffit detail. Currently, there is an aluminum soffit there. As we work with the agents and owners, if this project is to move forward, staff goes out there and we evaluate once they take off the inappropriate materials. We see exactly what the condition is underneath, and then we move forward with what the house is telling us. And then lastly, with the textured paint, while we're out there too, we'll evaluate that. We will have their team try to remove that textured paint to the best of their ability, and that's the direction we're going to go. If the paint cannot be removed and it's going to damage the siding, then we'll pick a direction that is most sensitive to the structure, and if it needs to come back to this board for review, then we'll bring it back. That concludes staff's comments at this time, and I'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gila. So now we will go ahead and open the hearing to public comment. If anyone would like to come forward and speak for or against the case, please rise at this time and come forward. Seeing no one, we will go ahead and close the public comment period, and the commissioners will now ask questions. And I will begin with the commissioner to my left, Commissioner Sutton. If you do not have any at this time, you can move to the next commissioner.
I have an additional comment right now respecting two of your constructions that are involved with this addition, and they're pretty substantial and have a bearing as to what this final appearance would be. Do you have any additional detail or material palette selections or combination of photographs in precedent for those railing elements that are part of your second-story porch, as well as for those railing elements that are part of the ramp? Because outside of the simplicity of the building, these two elements, to me, are a major addition, if you will, to the overall language to the house, because there is currently no porch, no front porch, no railing system currently involved with the existing structures. There's nothing really, if you will, to say, I'm going to match this. This is all a very brand new sort of an imposition outside of the addition in itself. But there's so much of it, it makes a big deal as to what that aesthetic is all about. What do you have for us tonight?
In the same neighborhood, there is some precedence for the railing, and this is similar to what we're planning on using. Obviously, a balcony needs some sort of barrier, and we didn't want to have a solid wall. We thought that would be too imposing in appearance. So we decided to try to find something that's already in the neighborhood. This is a good photograph for the columns as well. This is the type of detail we plan on trying to match for that. And as far as the ramp question, that will not be considered a permanent fixture. That's going to be a wooden structure. It will have the appropriate ADA kind of surface on it, but the railing will be similar to this as well. So it matches what's already there. It's not going to. We're trying to hide it, so to speak, so it doesn't stand out as much. Obviously, it's a ramp. You can only hide it so much, but we're going to try to make it fit the character of the house as best we can.
Have you submitted this photograph for this railing and porch column work as part of your package to staff?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Boyd?
All right, would you mind pulling the exterior elevations up? Sorry, will you mind sharing your elevations?
Anyone in particular, or all of them?
We'll run through all of them, and then do you have door and window specifications?
You had some of the windows here, didn't you? I thought. Yeah, here we go. The windows, well, at the moment are looking at gel-blend traditional, double-hung clad. There'll be wood windows, clad for the exterior. And we're going to try to keep that the same proportions as what's already on the house, as close as we can anyway. With the egress requirements in the bedroom, sometimes we can't quite get those proportions the same, but we'll do what we can. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, it is, and the rear door specifications as well.
Did you have anything on the doors? The French doors? I don't remember seeing that. Oh, here. No specification at this point.
Would you mind pulling up the rear elevation? Does the ganging of those 3 windows have any precedence on this house, or is that a new introduction?
The idea there, this is the breakfast nook in the kitchen area. They wanted as much light as possible. As far as ganging windows together, the house was, to my knowledge, didn't have that.
Okay. And then can you just pull up really quickly the eave-to-eave separation between the primary and garage structures?
Oh, between the garage structure. Okay. I'll just set that up. It's here. Ah, here we go. Right now, we're looking at just over 11 feet between the wall and the eave of that new roof and the existing structure.
Okay. And then I think there was one more elevation to review, the other side elevation. Is that the same side? Yeah. Give the south side.
This would be the north side there. The other side would be this shows existing chimney construction.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I say something? Yeah, one thing that I think, yeah, Dave Ward. Is that on? Anyway, one of the things we tried to do at your suggestion was to match the dimensions of the window throughout the project, windows throughout the project, which we did. We also completely changed the French doors to reflect a more period-specific French door that with a single pane glass that you guys suggested last time as kind of the right one to use. So even though the exact French door hasn't been spec'd yet, that is what will be placed there.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Ward. We'll move on to my next commissioner. Do you have any questions or for the agent or the owner?
Has there been any other thought processes? Actually, I should need to ask the bonus room, I'm going to call it. What is that room being used for?
You're referring to
Air-conditioned storage?
Okay. So has there been any thought processes, other options looked at as far as maybe being able to bring that roof line down?
Yes, we looked at that extensively to figure out the best way to actually get up to it. Since the original house doesn't really lend itself to kind of a pull down, there's one small opening right now in the corridor. And it's just tough to get in and out of that, and especially with AC components. So we decided to take the stairs all the way up. And as you get up to that area, the very peak is high enough for your head, and that's about it. 4 inches on either side of it, and the steepness of the roof is such that we had to bring those little wings out just to be able to stand up in there.
So the dormers are created for headspace?
Yes. Yeah, we tried, and we minimized as much as possible just so they wouldn't be as obtrusive.
And on the interior, I'm assuming you're trying to match the existing ceiling heights from the original house into
Correct.
the addition, is that?
Correct, yeah.
We've got a note here for hardware and lighting. I don't remember seeing anything. Do you have anything to submit to us tonight for that?
No, we haven't gotten that far as the actual selection, but obviously you don't want anything contemporary. We're trying to stay within the period of the house.
Okay. I think that's all I have right now.
Commissioner Myers?
It seems that you do have some ganged windows on the, I believe it's the south elevation,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
West?
Doubles, yes.
They're double.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess I was referring to her question about the triple.
Right.
There were no triples,
guess you
but
have-
are some doubles, yes.
It looks to me from the photograph that you have 2 doubles that are next to each other. Is that the way that works?
Yeah, the house on the east elevation does have a series of double windows.
Okay. And they kind of go nicely down toward the floor there a little, so they're a little bit,
Yeah.
you might think about that for your breakfast nook, but other than that, I have no further comments.
Well, in response to that, we could technically do that, but there's counter space right there. And for the sake of the ability to have a table and some place to service it, we have a counter there, and that's why the sill is a little bit higher.
All right, thank you.
All right, I think I don't recall a discussion of the roof materials. Can you just go over that quickly in terms of the intended roof conditions?
Well, once again, the actual material has not been selected, but it will be a shingle similar to what's on it now. Trying to match what's there now.
Okay. I think all the rest of my questions have been answered, or asked and answered, so.
I have one last question for Ron.
Absolutely, go ahead.
There's a note that says demonstrate consistency with trim detailing. I just want to make sure that that's been addressed.
Can you repeat that one more time?
On the staff report, there's a note that says demonstrate consistency with trim detailing. I just want to make sure that that has been addressed.
He showed some drawings today on his wall section. the success of the project, each structure has its own unique nuances, if you will. Sometimes that the siding dies into the trim on the windows and the doors. Sometimes the window trim and door trim is proud of that. So we take our cues off the primary house. When I went through the photo essay, I tried to show a little bit of that and show the shadowing or the reveal of the trim. So on the new portion, we're going to be looking for that same reveal that the older home is telling us.
Thank you.
I do recall one more question I had. I'm sorry. If
No,
you're
go
done,
ahead.
Commissioner. Okay. In terms of the site plan, I don't recall seeing where any new AC equipment might be going. I would suspect with the size of this addition, you may need to add on. Is that correct? And where would that be placed?
I'll answer that one.
Go ahead.
We've been thinking about this addition since we bought the house in 2005. And so when we replaced the air conditioner 10 years ago maybe, we sized it up for the new addition. So it's
Okay.
already appropriate for the size.
Okay.
And then we just, you know, I don't know what the technical term is, but we turned pieces of it off, I guess is the best way to say it. So it would accommodate the house. But so it's already there to accommodate the new
And it
addition.
doesn't need to be relocated for the addition. Okay.
Nope.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
That concludes. Any other questions or comments before we, okay? So at this time, both the owner and or the agent have 5 minutes for rebuttal if there's anything that you'd like to respond to and, add to the.
I just wanted to say, I'm Susan Ward, the homeowner. So Dave and I have lived in this house for 16 years, and we love it. You know, we love the historic nature of it, and our goal is to honor that history and respect all those historical features that we love so much, and do this addition to make it more livable for modern day life. And that's really our goal. And while we do that, we want to restore and repair and rejuvenate this house. So that's our goal. So the addition is important to our family, and we're excited about the project.
Thank you. Any other concludes?
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that closes the public hearing for the case, and the commissioners will now discuss the case. Thank you. So Commissioner Sutton, would you like to begin with any comments or discussion points? Or
The
even a
items
motion?
that I have here really are more indicative of, if you will, a laundry list. I see a relatively extensive laundry list for staff coordination for this project. I don't want to necessarily say that we're being kind of nitpicky about this thing, but there's a number of things that are just not terribly well resolved. We have the porch deck and column issue as to what those materials are and how they're being finished. That needs to be coordinated. The railing detailing and porch for both the porch and the ramp. The soffit detailing. We
Commissioner
understand-
Sutton, if you could, can you speak a little bit louder into the microphone? We're having a hard time hearing you over here. Thank you.
We have the soffit matter, where we do understand that the existing aluminum is coming down and that a period appropriate material will be put back up. What and how that looks like will be something that will need to be coordinated. Door and window trim, new doors, hardware, lighting. And the last thing I want to really hold on to is the idea of that fireplace element that's on the back porch. I understand where that's coming from. I understand what the desires are. My personal thought on that would be that that element, if it's going to go in as proposed at this point in time, should have some sort of a general appearance very similar in some respect to the existing chimney mast that's on the existing building, in terms of, either brickwork or coloring work or paint work or whatever else is necessary. But there should be some sort of coordination between those two elements, as opposed to having another mass of different material associated with the elevations for this building.
I agree. I think that the nature of the existing home is so simple and so symmetrical, and like minimal in a simple way. And there's just details that we don't have information on yet. Not that they're headed in the wrong direction. We're just not sure exactly where they're going. And then I wanted to get just sort of thoughts on the window sizing and patterns on the new elevations?
I'm not personally concerned about the overall window sizing and location. I think the intention to come close to the existing window proportions have been honorably met. Obviously, they have code concerns, and there's some interior planning concerns that affect where these windows are. But compared to where this was presented at 2 months ago, by my recollection, and to where it is right now, there's a whole world of difference that's happening now. I do understand, though, that the French doors and the glass-fronted doors might need to be looked at carefully with staff, because those could end up having a very clunky appearance to them, whereas the windows would not, and we might have to have those elements, the doors and their side lights, or the doors and their transom lights, more delicate in their appearance. But I think they're moving in the right direction with this too. As opposed to a multi-light French door, they're using a monolight, which is in some respects very, very much in keeping with the existing single pane, double hung windows.
I don't have any other comments.
As you heard in my questioning, I'm still having a little bit of a difficult time with the roof line. I'd much rather see it behind. And I think the big thing is, again, back to the comment about how the house is elegantly simple. I mean, it's a beautiful home. And unfortunately, I feel like that roof line is taking something away from what's there. I understand the purpose behind the of why they're needing it, but then I also have to, aside from that, as you made the comment about staff, and I've got a list here of 8 or 10 different things that seem to be going back to staff, and so now it looks like staff during the process of this project could be out there a couple of times a week trying to make decisions or help with the process of construction, and I'm just not sure that they're equipped for that, or they should have to. One of the things also that it seems like it's going to go back to staff that would like to hear some more clarification on is the texture on the wood. Obviously, we'd all like to see that texture removed, but I heard the comment made that it could be covered, taken off obviously as option number one, but then it could be covered. And if it's going to be covered, obviously that's going to bring out a whole nother list of issues potentially. And these are questions that we just won't know until they get into the process of construction.
I agree with that. It's going to be very experimental in some respect, though that's probably experimental on their part. But the materials do exist, a variety of different things that would be utilized for the stripping of paint. It all depends on how easily it wants to come off. That would make the job either reasonable or very difficult. But the products are out there, and we normally don't see that as an effort until we're dealing with older painted masonry buildings where they want to return that back to the original brick. You can't sandblast those. So that's where a majority of these stripping products came into play many years ago. They're still out there, and they're actually better today than they ever have been in the past. So I can see how some of these products might be brought to the fore for this project. But the idea of stripping an entire house by any method is going to be quite daunting. But I can't imagine it being more expensive than actually replacing all of the siding or recovering it with new siding.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen paint taken off of brick as well as wood in many different ways, whether it be sandblasting with nutshells, as well as the stripping. And again, I'm with you. I cannot imagine that it would be more expensive than replacing. But another comment I have is the fireplace at the rear. I think that if it's done correctly, it can be done in a way that it enhances the look of the home, rather than, I think the biggest issue we've had the last, the couple of times we've looked at it now is it's just there. And it's taken away from, in my opinion, it's taken away from the elegance of the home rather than adding to. So somehow we incorporate that, like you said, with, the same type of brickwork as what's on the existing. Maybe it extends on up, insets a little more. I'm not sure of the fix, but that is something else that's still kind of a sticky point for me. Other than that, from what we saw the first time 2 months ago, I think the project's come along quite nice, and I see a lot of progress here, a lot of positive progress. Just think we've got a much shorter list. We still do have some things that we need to look at, maybe in a little further detail, and maybe we need a little more detail from them.
Commissioner Meyer, do you have any comments or points that you'd like to make?
Staff has indicated that this is consistent with the guidelines. And so our concerns, and I share those concerns about the roof line and certain other elements in certainly the fireplace, but I'm not so sure that it's within our purview to reject the project based on those design difficulties that we have.
Well, I would tend to agree with that statement. I do think that there is a bit of a laundry list. However, I don't think it's more extensive than what we've asked the staff to take on before with other clients. I was not part of the hearing, I think, when this initially came forward, so I cannot comment on its progress and development and what's good and what's bad since the last time, and I don't think that's even relevant. I think what is relevant is that for the most part, I do feel that this project, as presented tonight, does meet the intent of the guidelines for the district as well as the Secretary of Interior standards. I do feel that at this point there still could have been some presentation of particular doors, windows, hardware, and lighting that gave a sense of the intent. However, to ask staff to review those in the field and with the client before allowing the work to move forward is not something that they haven't been asked to do before. And certainly, I think that they have the expertise to handle that in the field. When it comes to form and scale and proportion and things like that, obviously that is in our purview. I do have some concerns about the dormer component, not understanding its requirement and necessity, and hearing the discussion about the headroom being able to get all the way up and making that a feasible condition. I certainly understand it, but I do find it awkward from a design standpoint. And even with a tree in the landscape, and there's another one off to the side on the north elevation, I do think we rely too much on trees to help our designs, knowing that trees die, and sometimes owners take trees away. So there is that concern that when viewed from the north or even the south, it's just an awkward condition. So those are my comments. I don't know, what you'd like to entertain in terms of a motion, but if anyone has one that they'd like to put forth, certainly you have the ability to do so.
I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC 21-141 for the property located at 806 South Fremont Avenue with the following conditions. That the trim detailing is consistent with the existing structure, that the soffit is approved on site with staff after uncovering, that the exterior wall materials are determined with staff after determining whether the existing texture can be removed or if it needs to be replaced. All door and window specifications are approved by staff. All hardware and lighting specifications are approved by staff. That the rear porch materials and column detailing is approved by staff. And that the rear balcony and railing details are approved by staff, as well as all fireplace detailing and materials approved by staff. Because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons. That the rhythm and orientation, setback, and materials are consistent with the guidelines.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye and indicate by raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay?
Nay.
I believe we have a majority, correct?
The motion passed 3 to 2.
We had 3 to 2. The motion passes. Thank you and congratulations.
Good evening, Commissioner Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Moving to the next case for this evening is ARC 21-223. This is for the address of 1711 West Hills Avenue. This is in the Hyde Park Historic District. There is a vacant parcel there. There was a non-contributing structure that was removed. The request in front of you this evening, because we had some difficulties with the noticing, this evening you're just looking at the primary structure only. Site improvements and the two-story accessory structure will come next month. On July 7th, it's already scheduled. They're in the process of perfecting their noticing, but please focus on the primary structure only. The agent and the owners are aware of that request, and that's what's going to be addressed this evening. Moving to the Sanborn map. Is the podium ready? Yes. Thank you. So on everybody's monitor, is the Sanborn map illustrated?
No, it has not popped up yet.
We're going to go to the PC, please.
Oh, I thought you did it, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I always like to start with the Sanborn map, so you see the density and the fabric within the historic district and the immediate vicinity. This is at 1711 Hills. It's just west of the intersection of Roman Hills. To the north you have Watrous, and Hyde Park Village is down Rome to the north. There is an alley that runs behind it. Currently the parcel is a blank parcel, as I stated. This is looking from above. You see some of the roof lines here. You see a larger structure that takes on a Mediterranean influence on the corner, which is to the east, down Hills and Rome. This is looking back at the structure from Hills. Just to give you an understanding of some of the surrounding properties, you have a one-story structure that's abutting to the west. You have a two-story volume that's abutting to the east. Directly across the street you have some more frame construction and the two-story influence, and then you have a brick structure which is multifamily. Looking down the street, you see some larger structures, some multifamily. Hills Avenue, Watrous, and Jeton are some of the abutting streets that have multifamily zoning classifications. And then you have single family over here. Subject site is to the right here. This is looking down hills to the west. This is looking from the alley back towards interior with hills in the background. And just some shots to conclude of the alley and the condition of the alley. This is looking towards the east and turning around to the west. At this time, I would ask that the owner and the agent and everybody that wishes to testify to please stand up. Ms. Juzak will swear us in at this time. Thank you. And the agent could address the podium to start the presentation. Thank you.
I'm just seeing if it focuses one way or the other.
Yeah, they'll focus in the back if they can.
Yeah, I don't see it. Is it legible to you guys?
Yes.
Okay. Paper version.
It's going to be hard for us to read any text, though.
Yeah, so might zoom in. And I have. Oh, this is it. Oh, let's try this one again. Oh, that's much better. Okay, cool. Okay. All right, I think I can go from here. Which one am I talking to? This one. Hello, my name is Dominic Forlano. I'm here to present 1711 West Hills Ave. I'm with DK Design Concepts, and I was a recent grad of University of South Florida. I'm going to walk you through the plans and elevations and building sections, and then go through some material selections after that. So we're actually utilizing existing, or the house that was demolished, it was non-contributing, but it had a very similar footprint. It had a main residence and then an accessory structure. So we're kind of utilizing the same curb cut front of the road. And then we have a ribbon driveway that's been addressed with some of the HBDRC comments tying into the back. We're going to introduce a small gate here at just before the rear porch, and we'll have concrete ribbon driveway.
Commissioners, I'm sorry, just need to interrupt for a moment. Because there was no noticing on site elements for this particular application, those are going to be handled at the next public hearing. So I think we need to focus on the primary structure and the details, and all of this is just basically for context.
Just contextual information to kind of help walk everybody through the project. So we'll have plenty of parking in the rear, in front of the garage, as well as between the gate and that area. We'll have some, again, there is an accessory structure back there, and we have the stairs off to the side to a landing. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. So I'll run back to the front. We're utilizing a concrete walkway up to a pretty sizable porch, and you can see the front setbacks of the existing porches are diagrammed, as well as the primary structures on each side. And as well down the street, we have a diagram here that's been surveyed to kind of catch all of the street frontages. So we're within a few inches here and there of the existing conditions. We'll have all natural grass planted, and we've pretty much solved our ADS drainage to the front from the gutters, from the roof lines. And we are under the 50% rule, so we don't need to hold any water on the site. So I'm going to run. So I'm sorry, Dennis. We're not doing any site elements, so the fence isn't included. Okay. We'll walk you through, and let me know if this is blurry or doesn't show up, or if there's any issues with it. Okay, I'm jumping all over.
There you go.
Oh, okay. Is that readable? It looks blurry on this screen.
It might be, but it's best if you kind of talk from a larger perspective and then hone in on details that are pertinent to the matter here presented tonight.
Okay. The massing of the house you'll see in the next slide is broken up from the front elevation due to the front porch. All the neighbors have some front porches, so we want to keep that design characteristic in mind, that rhythm. We wanted to bring the front massing forward to help accentuate that Mediterranean mission style, the verticality built into that front elevation. Our porch roof is going to be sloped in one direction, hidden behind a upper parapet. And then as you enter the inside of the house, we'll have a nice vestibule that branches out. Centered inside the house, we'll have another vestibule that turns to the stairs. And this line of sight falls all the way through to the rear, which in the previous slide you'll see there was a pool in the back. The scales and proportionings of things are actually quite modest in terms of they're not overly sized or not giant spaces. It's broken up quite nicely. When we go up the stairwell here, we have put a window at the landing, so we'll have a nice kind of a stairwell, a light well in effect, kind of cascading through the space so that this isn't a very dark area. The rear of the house on the first floor, we're going to have some decently sized windows. It's a dining room, but it's kind of acting as a sunroom in a sense. And it's going to be open to the backyard, as well as the 5-panel doors with the 2 doors operating on each side. Going upstairs, we have a breakdown of just a couple of bedrooms, laundry rooms. We tried to, well, you see on the next slide, keep into consideration the proportions of the windows and the elevations and how that all works out. Again, here's the roof plan that I talked about on the cover sheet. Again, the floor plans for the accessory structure we're not working on tonight. So I can zoom in. This is the front elevation. We studied a couple of different designs, one being a project, actually a couple of projects that the clients had brought to our table in terms of houses in the neighborhood that they really liked and they wanted to kind of emulate. And so further on in the presentation, we'll kind of unveil those a little bit. But this is the front elevation. We want to have a pretty sizable porch, have this kind of be a third of a breakup, and this third over here being accentuating the verticality with the gable. Step this elevation back, but introduced a dormer to help pull this line up, and then this is a really good, strong kind of flanking edge for this roof line to return into. As that roof line turns into this, we'll have our gutter systems are all tying into an underground ADS system. And then this facade, at first, it seemed a little flat, a little plain. So we wanted to kind of introduce another dormer element to help break that up, because it's on the driveway side, so it's going to present really well. And on our dormers, we're actually including a couple brackets to help hold the bar drafter to kind of introduce some really nice ornamental detail. The rear elevation here there's the 5 doors again. This is the sunroom / dining room, the entry from the rear. These are your master windows, and then our egress windows and the master upstairs, and I believe that's actually in the closet. This is the other side of the house. It's on a 7-foot setback, so we didn't find it pertinent to bring in another dormer element, but we are returning this roof along this edge to help kind of accentuate that rear porch. It's going to have a nice presentation. I'll go through some of the items we're not addressing. Here's the front elevation of the accessory, just so you get an idea. We're pulling the details back, sides, stairs, and that's a section of the accessory. So from front to back, we have a building section here, stepping into the front porch. We're going to do a vaulted ceiling with exposed structure, exposed rafters. We have T&G ceiling. Not necessarily sure if we're going to stain it yet or paint it. We're kind of looking at both options, and we'll see what kind of lumber we use at that time. We're doing a blown insulation in the attic. So it's a lot of houses we're seeing these days are in Icynene, so we're going to use a blown insulation up there. And then the rear porch just steps down with a conventional flat ceiling. We'll do T&G in there as well. And we'll have like 2-foot overhangs with the roof trusses, with a T&G soffit underneath, with a decent hardy fascia on the end, and some rafter tails, spaced equally, probably in between 24 and 30 inches, just depending on the spans. We have a detail here of the front entryway. Stepping up, we have concrete ending into the landing, which we're going to tie some pavers in, like a gray-based paver, and then stepping up the concrete base into the front porch. That's the stair to the accessory. And then this is a stair section for the interior. So we're stepping up the stairs. It'll be a closed tread, probably wood tread to match the interior flooring. There's still going to be some selection process in terms of like what the actual style of the rail is and so on. But we're going to come up to a landing. Like I said, it'll kind of act like a stairwell or a light well, kind of bringing in light into that corridor. It's a CMU construction. We're using cast sills and headers. Where are we at? A couple other wall sections, which I already kind of walked you through this one, but we have a blown up version here that just kind of calls out some of the lanterns. We don't have an exact pick yet, but we have a pretty good idea of what we're looking at. Some of the cast trim elements, some of the cast caps, and some water intrusion details. We're going to use a metal front door. I think, I forget the name. And then we're going to use PGT vinyl windows for the traditional windows that we have. There's a detail at the rear porch. We'll probably do a smooth finished concrete. And then again, our cast header over the spans. And here's kind of a pretty decent makeup of our trim and our vented soffit there, and our preformed rafter tail. And then these are sections for the garage, which we could address at a different date. That's just the attic access. We're going to walk through like a real quick massing study, kind of a synopsis what Ron had already walked us through earlier. The client had given us a couple images, this being one of the houses. It's near Burns Steakhouse on Marjorie. They really liked the scale and proportion, some of the elements, but they wanted more of a, that curvy Mediterranean feel. So introducing that parapet that's broken up kind of help tie that together. We introduced a gable to help differentiate it and make it seem a little bit more vertical. I'm showing a couple other houses that are looking at different styles of front porches with that Spanish influence. Some of these houses, this actually has a shingle roof. This one has a shingle roof. We have some tile roofs here. We're proposing a shingle on our roof as well. I just kind of wanted to look at the proportioning. This is a nice center proportion with two flanking symmetrical sides. This is asymmetrical with a shed roof, some cool lattice elements in the front. These were a couple of the other houses that the clients had brought as inspiration imagery. So we tried to tie in like a vertical element with a gable there, a decent sized porch. Obviously these are very oversized. And then we don't have a porte cochere, but we're pulling in through the side there. I wanted to walk you through the site. Basically, we have, this is the Sanborn map of the pre-existing structure, and you can see the neighboring structures all have primary structures, and most of them have accessory structures as well. This graphic showed up a little bit weird, but you can see our main mass also has that accessory in the back. This is the street frontage. I think Ron kind of already walked everybody through this as well. This is the Mediterranean multifamily unit at the east of the house. It's like 3 or 4 houses down. And then we have a 2-story, a single story. This is the house that was demolished. And another couple single stories, mostly craftsman, bungalow vernacular. And then directly across the street are these 2-story houses, which are more of the Foursquare type floor plans type characters. So although our 2-story house is a little bit taller than our neighbors here, it kind of aligns with this Mediterranean, this 2nd story, and then these 6 or 7 different 2-story versions directly across the street. It's a really eclectic street. It's pretty neat to see the differentiating styles there. And I wanted to point out some of the other Mediterranean / Mission or Spanish styles in the neighborhood that are just a block or 2 away in all directions. Just how differing styles and details help show each home's unique approach to how it all ties together to form the historic Hyde Park. Although we might have a couple details in some of these elements, we're not trying to match or portray our houses an exact replica to any of these. Why it starts in the middle. This is kind of just a material presentation, trying to make it short and sweet. We're looking at doing CMU built up with 2-part stucco, smooth sand finish, mostly of a white or cream kind of character, similar to this kind of coloration here. Again, we're looking at the stair section and the pavers, and although we don't know the exact final product, we think there'll be clean pavers, maybe a little bit of an antique feel to them, but more on the gray tone scales here. We're looking at the ribbon driveways. I blew up a detail here of our 3 foot, 3 foot, 3 foot, 3 foot in the green space, which I think I said earlier, we're going to do it like a natural grass, no fake grass. We're looking at some of our bracketry details, our rafter tails, tongue and groove, V-groove soffits, which will be under the rafter or over the rafter tails and under the ceilings on the porches. We're looking at either doing like a square bracket overhang here, carrying the barge rafter, or maybe introduce a little concave to it. But this is pretty much the rafter tail style that we're going with, this unique little element there. We're looking at roofing materials as being shingle. We've saw a few houses in the neighborhood that have it in the Spanish Mediterranean type style, and with it being a taller home, we feel like it might be appropriate. You don't have such a visual connection to it like you do some of the lower single-story Spanish tile houses, like this one, for instance. So for the door systems, this is basically the door system we're going to see in the rear. We'll probably do a bronze version of it. Our front door and our ancillary doors will be of this character. It might not be exact. I'd kind of like to see a full light there, but we might go 3/4 on the ancillary doors. And our mutton makeup will probably be a single divided light, so 2 over 3 or 6 or 10, depending on the final selection. Garage doors, we're looking at like a Banco overhead carriage door. So although it looks like it opens left and right, it's still an overhead door. You know, it's basically going to be, you know, this level character, maybe a different darker color to match our trim colors. It was kind of hard to find the color that we're looking for, but we kind of threw in a color swatch over here. Our windows, we're doing a PGT casement windows, vinyl clad, browns on the exterior, most likely white or browns on the interior. We're just showing some imagery just to show the level of you know, character there. Again, we're not really discussing the site elements. Some of our exterior lighting features, that's kind of what makes the house at night, right, in the neighborhood. And so I was actually just discussing with the clients how my wife and I would go down to the neighborhood at night and just walk around and see all the uplight characters. It's gorgeous, and it really helps make the house. So we want to kind of tie into that craftsman style Spanish flavor, introduce some nice, you know, textural elements as well as light. For the door hardware here, some nice bronze aged, you know, finish to make it look kind of at character. Some of the trim elements, we're just showing some, well, that did not show up. That was another cast stone element showing this header here. But we'll do a cast stone for the arches at the porches, and then we'll have another cast stone element here that's mimicking a lintel or a wooden lintel of a previous period. This will be a faux decorative cast or preformed element, and I'm just showing another decorative trim example. I believe that's it. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, then staff will present their report. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Please remember to focus on the primary structure only. There were some other items that are introduced for contextual reasons, but tonight's review is for the primary structure. Staff's finding that this application is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines. On page 3 of your staff report, under conditions, there were items that require additional discussion this evening. When we first took this project in, I worked with their team to define the style of the structure. He did show some inspiration in the neighborhood, but if he could elaborate that and show the sensitivity that his project is alluding to. He also showed some information with the front yard setback that is consistent with the block averaging. But along with the front yard averaging, we also look for elevation from grade. So if he could call that out, or if he has a diagram to illustrate that. To submit additional information on the arched header over some of the openings. A lot of times this style structure is grounded with either a water table or some foundation vents that he has not presented this evening. So that could take on further discussion as well. And then lastly, consider alternative roof materials. He did show some properties within the vicinity that had different types of roofing, and to discuss why he selected the one that was chosen this evening. So that concludes the staff report, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now open the public hearing to public comment. Is anyone present that would like to speak for or against the project? Seeing none, we will close the public comment. I'm sorry. Are the people entering?
Next case.
Next case, okay. We will go ahead and close the public comment period, and commissioners will now ask questions of the agent. I will start from my right with Commissioner Myers this time.
Let's see here, it's not my time to question the professional, is that correct?
I'm sorry?
Am I able to question the professional?
This is the opportunity for us to ask questions of the agent, and
Yes,
sometimes
okay.
the owner will also respond.
Okay, yes.
Okay?
Mr. Vila mentioned the elevation, whether the elevation of this house is similar to those in the neighborhood. Is that, it seemed so from what I saw in the photographs. Can you address that question, please, for us?
Now you guys all know my password.
It was too fast.
So first I'll address the top of floor slab elevations. Our interior slab is at 20 foot, 0.2 NAVD, which is well above any of the flood zone applications, as well as the garage, but we're not talking about that. The Crown Road is at 16.13, so we're several feet above the Crown Road. In terms of addressing the front elevation, we're 3 steps above at about 7.25 per step. So I'll show some imagery of some of the neighboring houses that are the same. So the house next door has 4, differing sizes and steps, but they're quite shallow. They look like they're about 12 inches and 6 inches tall. So that'd be about 24 inches above grade. The previous house had 3 steps, and the house to the left, well, I can't really tell if there's 2 or 3 there, but we're at 3, so we're definitely falling within the 2 to the left, and then 4 steps to the right, and within a reasonable. We don't want to exceed the 30 inches and have to introduce railings and all that. So we're coming in well within reason between all 3 variables.
All right, and the addition of a water table, you are doing a slab on grade and you're filling underneath your slab, correct? So there is no crawl space, so there is no...
Well, it's a stem wall on grade.
Right, yeah.
But correct. And then I wanted to introduce this photo based on, if we did have a water table and vents, after the foliage gets planted and grows, it might render it obsolete. And then we're also not trying to recreate an exact replica. We don't have a crawl space, so I don't know if we necessarily want to embellish the falseness of that particular element. So in the front elevation itself, I think in some of the Spanish applications, less is more, and it might read quite nice with the verticality, not having a water table flatten out that vertical element. Kind of looking at this elevation here. If we had another element here, or a water table running horizontally, it might stunt that vertical kind of move that we're trying to maintain.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. Thank you. Those are the only questions I have.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers.
Have any other roofing materials been thought about or
Yeah,
looked into?
Well, everybody's familiar with the explosion in material prices at the moment. So to explore like a slate or an S-tile was on the shelf early on, just based on a lot of cost analysis. This house being as tall as it is, like I said previously, you're not really going to catch a lot of visuals to it. I'll use this photo again. And then the house that we're doing currently has I think a 44-inch oak in the front of it. So it's going to kind of find a lot of that visual accentuation. It's a 55-inch. It's larger than I thought.
That's all I have now.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyd.
I don't have any questions.
Sir, I have a couple questions regarding your detailing. I'd like to first, let's go back over some of your cast work that you are anticipating for your detailing? Because I noticed that we're looking at some cast archwork over your porches. I understand that. I understand your thoughts on having certain cast work for your sills. Are all your windows going to have that cast sill?
Correct.
What about the headers?
The headers will be an applied cast member after the lintel is placed, prior to any of the stucco being brought in.
Can you show us a detail respecting that? Because I don't see that level of detailing on the elevations.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of like this element here.
Yes, that is when you have your gang windows, but what about your singlets?
Oh, my normal windows, that's just going to be a return, drip edge, stucco return.
Okay, so
simple
that's going
returns.
to be limited to your more monumental elements.
Correct, yeah, kind of a breakdown. So I have a detail here explaining kind of those relationships. The head return is basically a stucco bead return. And the jambs as well, and then the castcrete sill at the base.
Let's continue on that again for some of your detailing. I understand you have your cast archworks for your porch works as well as your mass lintels, and they have a certain mass. They have a certain depth and meat to them. Can you describe to us and talk to us how you are planning to deal with your front porch and that top of wall?
Yeah.
Because that thin ribbon I see on your elevation doesn't share the same kind of massing that are on your other more monumental elements.
So you're referring to this element here?
I am indeed.
Okay. I had it at a 4-inch size on one of my initial drawings, and as well as maybe even my hand drawing. I have a detail here. So that's going to be a cast element as well. I have it at a 2.5 inch with a pretty decent size overhang, at least 1 inch beyond the stucco face. I don't think we really want to have a significantly tall element there. We want to let that fine line kind of do the talking and let some of the other elements pull some hierarchy out of that.
Are you going to accentuate that by color in any way or material?
I don't know. I think I would let the shadow line kind of accentuate that. We have a lot of different colors in terms of some of the windows and the brackets and the bar drafter. Maybe this subtle, introduction of a non-colored material with it being a defining element as it is might just be enough.
I understand you're using some sort of a nature of beadboard or tongue and groove board for your soffits.
Tongue and groove, yeah.
Is that also going to continue over into your porch ceilings?
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions? I have none either. So you now have 5 minutes for rebuttal. If there's anything that you'd like to respond to that you felt like you need to address.
Well, I know Ron had a couple open items.
I think you got everything
Did I hit
because I've
everything?
been checking
Okay.
them off as you went.
I was trying to check them off as I was, going through.
Yeah. Anything then? No?
I think I'm okay.
Okay, great. We're going to go ahead and close the public hearing then, and then we will have a discussion and make our decision.
Cool.
So I think I'll start with Commissioner Myers. If there's any comment or discussion points, or if you want to go ahead and make a motion, you certainly can.
I have no further items for discussion.
Commissioner Taylor?
No, the only really question I had was about the roof, and I definitely understand the thought process there, and there's precedent in the neighborhood currently for shingle. So as much as I would love to see a clay tile, I definitely understand the thought process, and also understand that roof materials can be changed at a later date.
I appreciate the level of detail that you brought to the hearing today. I have one little comment that I want to give. The interiors, just make sure that the homeowner's intent for interior furnishings is accommodated, and that's my only comment.
Commissioner Sutton, any comments or points of discussion?
There's a certain sparseness to your elevations, and I don't know if this is entirely brought about by the newness of the building and its materials, as opposed to the elements that might be more handcrafted in various previous generations. But I'm wondering if I'm looking at this wrong, because when I see an old school Spanish colonial revival building, I'm looking at a building that has some sort of coarse texture to it, and this is not intended to have that. So I understand where the general aesthetic is coming from, but for some reason I keep thinking that there needs to be a more textile, tactile appearance and actual feel to it. Like you'd actually want to touch the walls, like you'd actually want to touch the doors. But that's probably just me looking at it in this vein, because this is a new building in a contemporary Spanish revival style. So I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, Commissioner. I also can see where the smooth sand texture can come into play historically. Obviously, it had to do with the level of craft available, the labor force and things like that throughout time. I certainly would love to say that, you know, we could demand the craft, you know, more elements and things like that, but you're absolutely right. One of the, you know, concepts with the Secretary of Interior standard is not to necessarily copy every detail of a particular style or period of time. I think that overall the project speaks very well to the period and the style. I do think that if you had not made the move with the front porch and allowed the elevation to sort of step down as one moved away from the front door, it would have been very stale and subdivision-like. So I applaud that move. I do think there's some moves there in the strengths of the verticality with the front elevation and then the elevation that speaks to the drive that will be going in. So those become a primary or secondary feature elevation, which is appropriate. I do believe that the presentation tonight was very well prepared. I myself like to present the tone and the intent before I go into drawings, so maybe just think about that a little bit to sort of set the tone of where you're going to take us on a journey, because it prepares us for the details that we're going to expect and the things in the drawings that we're going to expect. Another thing, it is not our purview to know exactly what's going on in the interior, so you don't, it's great that you present it, but you don't need to spend a lot of time on it. So thank you for doing so, but just to save yourself in the future, to clients and things like that. But other than that, well done, and I think you have a very strong project and you're serving your clients well tonight. So, any other questions, comments, points, or maybe a motion?
I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC 21-223 for the property located at 1711 West Hills Avenue, with the following conditions: that the final door selections are approved by staff. Because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons: that the scale, massing, proportion, and setbacks are appropriate with the guidelines.
Before we go too far, do we need to add that this is for the primary structure only?
I think we probably do. So let's just add an addendum to that statement that this is for the primary structure only, with the site elements and accessories to be discussed at a later hearing.
So this certificate of appropriateness is pertaining only to the single-family primary residence.
Do we have a second?
I will second that motion.
Before, Madam Chair, before you vote on the, okay.
So as the agent, do you understand the conditions of the motion that was just discussed?
Yes.
Okay. And So those in favor, please say aye and indicate so by raising your hand.
Aye.
Nay, seeing none, the motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioner Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Our last case that we'll review this evening is ARC 21-185. This is for the address of 1202 North Howard Avenue. This is a local landmark. This is a cigar factory that dates back to 1911. This was reviewed and a recommendation was forwarded to City Council, which ultimately was approved, and that was in December of 2019. At that time, the footprint and site issues were established through the PD. So this evening, the request for a certificate of appropriateness is for rehabilitation to the cigar factory, a new construction. There's some appendages that were approved through the PD with some site issues for improvements this evening. Moving to the photo presentation that is up on your monitor. This is in the West Tampa National Historic District. It's not a local district, but it's in front of you because the structure is a local landmark, which is indicated here. It's to the north of Nassau, and it flanks Howard Avenue, which is a primary corridor in West Tampa. You have Arch to the north, and then you have the interstate as you continue to the north. You see some of the housing stock here, that it is very apparent that when the cigar factory owners came and they started the boom in the early 1900s, that the housing stock was surrounding the historic fabric. This is the West Tampa National Historic District, outlined in blue, and you see the cigar factories on the southern fringe of it. This is looking at an aerial. Once again, it's on the corner of Nassau and Howard. You see the roof had been compromised, but I've been in the building and there's no water intrusion currently. There is an alley that runs to the north. Looking at the primary facade, which is the east elevation, which faces Howard. Just to look a little closer at some of the features that it has its dental molding, and then this parapet at the top. Looking at the ceremonial entrance, it's a grand staircase moving to the main doors. This area had been rebuilt some time ago, it was deteriorated, and prior owners had put this back into place. This is looking at the south elevation. There is going to be a new construction around here that's going to be an entry feature to this new hotel. This is the podium for the water tower, which is here. And they're illustrating to incorporate the water tower back into this request. This is looking at the north elevation, which aligns with the alley to the north. And this is the rear elevation, or the west. You see that there were some shutters here. The implementation of the shutters are part of this request. If you look closely, you'll see some of the knuckles or the hinges that were on the cigar factory at the time that it was built. A lot of the cigar factories just had them on the lower levels. The cigar factory had them on every level. This is looking at the coins and how the corners come to termination. And then the last photo, just going back up top, you see some banding and arches over the windows. Here are the knuckles again that I spoke about, and then the dental, and then the top course that completes the cigar factory. At this time, the owner and the agent could please stand, raise your right hand to get sworn in. Ms. Cusack, please. And at this time, your team could approach the podium. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brian Sykes. I am counsel for the applicant in this matter. My client acquired the property several years ago. It was originally intended to be it was going to be renovated to be an office building for Coast Dental. For whatever reason, they didn't proceed through with it. And we were here before the commission about a year and 7 months ago when we received a favorable recommendation for the PD rezoning. Just kind of an overview, the intention is to keep the historic nature of the structure, keep the appearance of the structure. We are, however, not able to maintain the entirety of the interior integrity due to the conversion of use from a historic abandoned cigar factory at this point in time to what will be a boutique hotel. We have our team of architects here. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Morales. He'll be able to tell you a little bit about what we're doing, about how we're going to repoint the brick, replace the shutters, replace some of the damaged elements, structural elements, and architectural elements, and what the end product will look like.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Yosvani Dioca Morales. I'll be pleased to show you more or less what the nature of the work that we are about to do is. I would like to start as Ron recommended, looking at the site plan first. I guess this works like this, right? Okay. Okay, so that's the zoom.
Yeah, up is
Up.
out.
Perfect. Well, as you can see, that plan shows us all the surroundings of the building, and we can see the main structure stays obviously where it stands, and we will be creating the main access to the building from the aligned with the lower level at this entryway right under the water tower, where the water tower is located. And there are certain areas that have been added, like the pool deck and the pool to the north side of the building, and the 2 parking lots nearby. So the main structure, as I said before, will remain in its entirety, and we will take advantage of all the 4 levels. Basement will become the public areas, and from level 2 and up, they're going to be the guest rooms. So there will be no construction above the roof, and the entire facade is going to be preserved. So that will be for the site plan. I think before I go into I think it's best if we go to the architectural drawings first. And right, so that's the presentation sheet, and this is the architectural site plan that shows the different features around the building. As you can see, we enter the building this way. Right under the tower, there's the new patio right next to the bar that's going to be on the basement floor, and we do have another patio to the front of the building nearby the main grand stair, and the pool deck is to the other side. So all the parkings will be connected to the entries of the building and will become egress from the stair towers that we are creating outside for life safety. And there will be ramps and landings accordingly to provide safe egress from the building at all instances. So we have located the dumpster enclosure to that side of the site, and also have located the HVAC equipment and the utilities to the alley side of the building, which are going to be screened and landscaped for visual purposes. So we have a set of plans that we have called conservation sheets, demo conservation sheets, that shows us what is the process like to get to that result. So we have included in these sheets whatever we have a demolition or element that is being retired from the building because of bad state or compromised structural condition. And it's all done based on certain guidelines that we set up from the beginning. So the purpose of these plans is to tell how are those areas configured, what are the damages, and what is being done at a certain location. So for that purpose, we have the legend indicating the different damages that you can find, and they are located on the floor plans, also on the elevations, which we are going to see further down in the presentation. And that way we locate and identify all these damages and what is the extension and what will be the treatments recommended for each one of those cases. So we do also provide a guideline for the cleaning of the building and maintenance of the brickwork, basically indicating what the process is going to be like, and trying to establish that there will be no sandblasting or high pressure washing or anything of the brick. So we don't want to lose the current brick is already deteriorated, and some of the areas are actually bulging out. There will be a detail in the structural part of the presentation that you're going to see how we're going to try to approach that issue. So we set up the guidelines as far as it goes for the repointing of the brick. It's a lengthy description what I have here, but basically it comes from basically the first thing that needs to be noted is that this process has to be supervised by skilled conservation specialists or persons on site that will handle this situation. And it's a very detailed process. It starts with the cleaning using low pressure combined with scrubbing of the facades, and also using non-ionized detergents in case that they will be used. So typically what happens is the next step will be the retiring of the grouting that is defective, and then typically it's deeper than 2 and 2.5 times of the thickness of the grout. So that will be carefully retired and then rebuilt. And our recommendation is this being done with a lime mortar to match the same color of what we have. Later on a different presentation that I have here prepared with the materials and elements that we're going to use, we can go more into the details. So there's a series of sheets indicating what are those elements that are damaged, needing to be replaced. And then we go to the elevations. Here we get a little bit more descriptive of what the nature of the damages here are, and we indicate the areas that we have elements that needed to be preserved, areas where we have we will have to demo and replace with new brick. This is mainly because of the structural condition. Some of those walls are actually bulging out dangerously, and as part of the construction process, this has to be addressed. So north elevation is one of the more compromised elevations. All these areas here with the bluish color indicates bulging areas and heavily compromised brickwork that needs to be addressed. And so on, you can go through the plans. We have been very careful to identify all these areas. And again, in these tables, we identify what is recommended at each case. So as we move on, these are the architectural plans showing what is the distribution of the interior spaces. Basically here, there's not much to say in terms of the preservation, but we're doing everything we can to salvage all the items that we find inside the building, like cast iron pieces and elements that are still surviving in there. We're going to salvage them. One of the recommendations is that there's got to be an on-site space where all these valuable items that are identified during the construction and demolition process could be salvaged, put together, classified, and reutilized down the process. I think I forgot to mention that at the beginning. It was very important. And so all the upper levels will be almost like typical floors with all the units. I'd like to take you to the elevations. These are the proposed elevations where we show that the building actually maintains its character, and we preserve the nature of the materials. And something that I forgot to mention is that in this building we do have remains of old paintings indicating the former name of the building and so on. And it is the intention to preserve those elements as witnesses of what happened with this building in the past. Even if those letterings are not perfect, it will be quite an interesting thing to display. So, as Ron was mentioning at the beginning, you can see the water tower with the water tank on top. I have to say that this is not going to be a functional water tower because of structural concerns. There's no way to allocate that level of liquid on top of a failing structure that needs so much repair. So what we're doing is we're engaging with artisans and welders, and we will propose kind of a water tower tank artsy design, if you know what I mean. It's going to be mimicking the original tower, but it's going to be, I don't want to use the word fake, but it's not going to be functional. So it's going to resemble a traditional type of water tower, and we're planning to light it at nights and whatnot, providing architectural lighting so this feature could be seen, you know, as an icon within the context of this building. So I think these elevations quite show what is the intention with that. Also, on the main elevation from Howard Street, you can see the main entrance. We preserve all the elements of the architectural language that we have there, creating basically no obstructions of visibility towards any of these elements. We're planning to restore and restore is going to be the right word. The grand stair is a cast iron stair. And there are also other elements of cast iron throughout the building, like the hinges or knuckles for the shutters that Ron was mentioning before, that will be part of this plan to be restored, maintained, protected, coated, and painted and displayed in the end. So you can see that we add the shutters and preserve the architectural language. So when it comes to the fencing around the pool, we decided to use a combination of black metal railings to the code height, together with pillars, brick pillars, and crowned with a light fixture that resembles a lantern. We're going to see a little bit more of this in detail later on the other documents that I have. But basically, that's the interpretation that we're doing. We want the pool deck to be blended together with remaining of the building, so it's not standing out as a striking, modern-looking piece of addition to the building, but rather something more integrated to it. So this building section is quite interesting because it shows all the progression from the ground floor all the way up. So you see that we have our new structure, getting in together with the envelope of the building. As you know, it recesses back at every level to allow for structural support. So we maintain all the sizes of the original openings and create separation of the ceiling, creating these pockets whenever it's necessary to allow for these openings to maintain its character even at night if they are lit up or something from within. So it goes up all the way to the roof where we crown the building with, with the existing dented decorations and moldings and so forth. All that is going to be maintained. Inside the water tower, we are creating some rooms. They're a bit more spacious than the other ones as they connect the tower spaces with some other space inside the building. So I think it's a nice integration of these two interior areas. I know the interior is not the most significant part of this discussion, but I would just like to mention that. Also, we are utilizing the grandeur of this space as you go inside the building. So actually, the water tower is becoming like the icon entrance of the new entrance of the building. So it's quite an interesting thing that this portion of the building that was probably the most utilitarian, it's becoming the main entrance of the building. But we're still respectful of all the concrete and the elements that are there. We do have details for the spalling concrete with pins and a product that we are planning to utilize. It's a Cypex product that is capable of hardening and preparing the existing concrete to be solidified and integrated with the old and the new, as well as protecting the rebars. So you know that the rebars at this stage are pretty much oxidized, and the concrete is really spalling real bad in most of this structure. So that's going to be one of the challenges of the project when it comes to construction. So in terms of image of what you can see, I set up I would like to have made a lot more renderings, but I utilized the Revit rendering engine to create more views so you would be more familiarized with what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to do. And this one is very interesting, that shows all the different elements that we're talking about. The water tower with the new water tank, the entire structure of the old building, the main entrance being preserved, the new roof on the repaired roof, I should say, on the porch, and also this, which I believe is kind of interesting, is we are trying to utilize a more industrial look image and language on the exit stairs, so emphasizing the structure. That's why we chose to have a translucent material on the roofing, so it kind of emphasize all the structural elements that are part of this construction. So the stairs are a little bit more integrated with what is supposed to be an industrial looking building. That's the entrance to the building. As I said, you can tell the higher grand space before you go into the building. This is a daytime rendering that shows the entirety of the building. As you can see, pretty much everything is preserved. You can see the shutters, all the moldings, and obviously the brick is supposed to be repaired at that stage, and repointed and everything. So it's kind of an anticipation on how it would look like. This is what I was trying to refer about the letterings that we find on the building. Obviously, these letters that you see here they seem to be brand new. But we are conscious that this is going to be not that pristine. It's going to have a patina. So it's going to show exactly how it is. It's going to be restored to the point that we maintain what we see. And again, the water tower element. This is another daytime view that shows the view from the corner, where we can see the new patio and the canopies. We decided to go with a lighter approach. We previously showed heavier canopies and red colors and stuff. We went a little bit milder with that. Sort of integrates a lot more with the existing building. I forgot to mention also that the lettering is very important to us, but also this element, decorative element that is seen at the center of the circle here is not shown, not displayed, but we are aware of it, and we know that we want to preserve that and restore it and bring it back. This is a perspective, very preliminary perspective of the pool deck. Basically, the intention of this perspective was to show the pillars and the lanterns and the relationship between all these elements together with the building. It can show from here, so it's that type of feel what we are trying to achieve. So it's a combination of elements. Again, the stairs with the translucent roof and the remaining of the building. A little bit we can talk about the shutters. We are trying to bring them back. We're proposing to bring them back and utilize the existing anchors and hinges that are in place. As I mentioned before, these are made out of cast iron, and the plan is to integrate the new panels as prefabricated panels made out of a wood structure with sheeting and metal sheeting on the exterior, painted in black, as typically is in all the other buildings. So for that matter, we would like to show you a couple of shots of buildings that you may probably be very familiar with. And we have the Arturo Fuente building and the Garcia Vega buildings. So it's a typical layout. It's very common in this type of buildings, and this is exactly what we're trying to achieve. In this case, we will have concealed brackets because we need to keep these shutters in an open position and fixed, so it doesn't conflict in time of hurricanes or anything like that. So we want to have it in a safe environment. So this detail goes about that. So it's basically telling the story of what's going on there. So from here, I would like then to move on. David, can you pull up the other document, please? So I prepared a separate document showing the different materials and elements that we want to include in the building, so you have more clarity on how is this going to be implemented. So we are planning to have a membrane at the main roof of the building, which will not be seen from anywhere around the building, but still we found this fiber-tight simulated metal roof profile, which is very interesting, and it might be probably implemented that way. It kind of gives back the feel of an industrial aspect of the building. Sorry? By that?
Yes.
Okay, I'm new to this. So in the second place, the front porch, which is a characteristic element in the building. It's is very central. It marks the symmetry of the entire facade. We have a couple of options there. One would be a standing seam metal roof. But we also found this interesting traditional form design that we have here. It's like a metal shingle that could be probably replace the standing seam option. Our primary option will be the standing seam roofing, and as a second option we have these if it makes more sense, and therefore I would like your input on that at the end of our presentation. That was the purpose of this. So also when it comes to roofing, just to clarify or try to bring you to what elements are we having. Sorry. Okay. All right. I was not aware of this. Sorry about that. If you missed something, let me know. So this is the idea for the roof, the translucent roofs that we want to use, and kind of giving you the overall look of what the intention is. On the brick, on the facades, there are several elements to the facades, obviously. We're not adding new walls to the facades, so we're keeping the existing facades, so it becomes a critical element in the design. So we already talked a little bit about this, but just to emphasize the damages that we're facing, we do have a lot of areas that are not originally preserved and has been painted, so we will have to retire all the old painting layers and keep up with good practice. So some other damages are, you can tell there very easily that the grout has been replaced with cement, which is not a good practice. So that's why we are trying to recommend an entire process that takes care of all these fixings. Oops. I think I did something wrong here. Lost the image. Anyway, don't worry, I have the document here. So, we have parasite vegetation on the facades. We have moss. We have many other different damages. We have brickwork that is completely obliterated. It has to be replaced. So similar bricks can be taken or utilized from the inside walls of the building that have the same type of brick. And these portions of walls, because of the state of it, will have to be demoed. And we can salvage those bricks and put them on the facades and be reutilized that way, and obviously do the grouting as we are recommending. So the repointing of the bricks, as we were mentioning before, is a critical aspect of the process. So I think the purpose of showing this guy doing the job with such a small tool is just to represent that this is a very careful process that cannot be left on the hands of someone that doesn't really know how it's being done, because then the ending result will be the complete damage of entire historic facades. So we don't want that to happen, and that's why we prescribe these procedures in our demo conservation sheets, as I was mentioning before. And this picture here shows more or less the end result once it's done properly. All the grouting is set back in place, recessed from the surface of the bricks, because you know when you have historic bricks, they damage on the corners, on the edges, and if you route it back to the exterior surface, you end up with a massive, huge grout that looks actually gross. So we don't want that either. So it's a careful process, and it actually confers the building the actual the nicer level of finished work that we want to achieve. I know you're...
One second.
Sure.
We'd respectfully request if we could have approximately another 5 minutes. Do you
I would
think,
say
about
so,
it?
yeah.
We have a few more elements we'd like to go through, especially with respect to the pool deck, some of the lanterns and whatnot.
I hear a motion to extend time for them to complete their presentation.
I move that we allow an extra 5 minutes for them to complete their presentation.
I hear
Okay.
a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor say aye and indicate by raising your hand.
Aye.
Seeing no nays, you have 5
Thank you,
minutes.
thank you very much for the extra time. I will go very quickly over the remaining of these sheets. I think you're already familiar with this detail. It's all telling the story of how we're going to do this. And obviously the end result, you have it here. So this is just showing you those knuckles or hinges that we still have on the facades that we want to remain and utilize as actual brackets or hinges for the new shutter panels that we're going to put. I think the cast iron portion of the building, it's important. So we are planning to set up a cast iron procedure for restoration, which is described down below here, with a final refinish and coating process that we also prescribe. I would like to talk about the only remaining door that we will salvage, which is the main entrance through the porch. And the plan is to salvage the existing door. Somehow it's very damaged, but I believe it could be restored, reassembled somehow. And we are planning even to save the existing hardware, which is decorative, and also saving all these panel entry trims. And obviously the beautiful transom stained glass piece on top of that entry is going to be also maintained. And finally, we can just say a few words about the windows. The windows are in bad shape in many areas, so the decision has been to replace them with new ones, but we're going to actually replicate the existing ones, or at least the ones that are closer to the period original of the building that we can identify, and bring them to a similar look as it has happened, like in this case, in the Arturo Fuente building. It's that type of finish what we're trying to do. So these are going to be pre-finished aluminum doors, windows, with the texture and finished look and color similar to what we are seeing here. And finally, on the lighting, these are just a couple of images showing you more in detail what are the products or the type of fixtures that we're looking at to get these elements completed. This is the lantern by the pool with the fixture, and also we can see here a nighttime rendering of the porch with the lantern that will be there. So we're looking at square type of fixtures as a consistent language throughout the building itself. And also there's a couple of notes here regarding the lit up of the tower at night and the use of different elements for hardscape, like the brick pavers, basically for most of the exterior spaces. We might probably utilize a differentiated color for banding or edging at some instances. And the pool is going to could be a little bit different. So for that instance, we still want to use the brick, kind of a brick paver concept, if you like. Finally, a few words just about the structural process. This is a detail of the shoring, being this one of the envelope walls, and the plan is to have this shoring inside and out while we're doing the demolition process and construction of the new floor ceiling assemblies inside. The detail nearby shows us how the new structure is connected or pinned through the existing walls, and while securing it every 4 feet, we're going to have a pin detail like this around the perimeter of the building at the connection with the floor ceiling assemblies. And I think that will be it, because the last page was a more detail, but it's just verbal that I can probably talk about. But it's just a detailed description of the repointing process being so important for this building. So with that, I think I'm done. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So if that concludes the presentation, staff will present their report. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Staff's finding that this application is consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards. We reviewed plans that were submitted to us on March 19th, and there were some changes made along the way as we approached today's date. The documentation that we use in evaluating a local landmark is the Secretary of Interior standards. Obviously, there is no guidelines to go along with this. Our main concern was on page 4 with our staff report was the complete preservation plan as he's moving forward, and he did a comprehensive plan. But just to elaborate on some of the items, on one of the illustrations that I showed through the photo essay, you saw that roof was compromised, and he did explore the option to re-roof. But along with that is the direction of the water. So if he could discuss a little bit about the scuppers and the gutters and how that's going to be incorporated into the final project. He did address the finished wall materials, the bricks. I'd like to see if they reached out to anybody to see if there's selection of the bricks. He talked about in some areas there's going to be demolition, so the sensitive demolition along with the rehabilitation here, if you dismantle the structure and palletize those bricks, then you could reincorporate them into the project. But I don't know the availability of the bricks that will produce. He did address the windows. The windows are a huge component of the project moving forward successfully, and that is something that that staff will take very seriously. We will work together if the project moves forward on selecting the appropriate window. So he just talked about an aluminum window today, but I'm not satisfied with that as the best solution, so we will move forward with the final window selection. On the lighting he presented, but there is some surface lighting in the parking lots. I did not see any illustrations of that this evening. The water tower has been modified from the initial one that we saw. I don't know if they're trying to locate a water tower, because we've worked with other cigar factories in the past and it's very difficult, or if they're going to try to replicate one and build one. I'd like to see if they have a path for that. The sign package and the awnings have been modified. They're more in line with what would be appropriate to a cigar factory. And then on the south elevation, on one of the upper levels, it appeared that you had some mechanical equipment up there. And just to expand on that item a little bit, it was not seen, or I didn't see it this evening through your presentation. The vertical accessibility was mentioned this evening. I believe that it is consistent as presented. That more industrial look would have been something that you would have seen on the cigar factories, along with the fencing around it is more period appropriate. A lot of the cigar factories, when we have the historic photos, a lot of them had little knee walls with fencing above to kind of delineate the private spaces that they had there. The plan that was shown is consistent with the PD plan. Not 100% of what was shown this evening is in line, but I did reach out to the other reviewers within the city to see if it would trigger a substantial change, and I had not heard back from them yet. So I don't believe that what the minor modifications with the solid waste enclosure relocating and some of the mechanicals off the alley elevation would not trigger that change. So having said that, I'm here to answer any questions that you have. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Ron.
Yes.
I'd like to add on to that if I could.
Okay.
Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Just a couple points. This was the first comprehensive presentation that I've seen, and I'll start off by first of all thanking the design team. Obviously, they spent a lot of time and consideration on how to approach the historic adaptive reuse of this building. And also to just point out that cigar factory buildings in the city of Tampa are perhaps one of our most well-regarded cultural, architectural resource that we have. And there's only 26 of them that are left. And so each one that we approach has to be done so very cautiously. I too share some of the comments that Ron made about the water tower. I think that's a bold gesture to try to reestablish that, but it does need to be done so carefully. So as you consider that, I think that's something that staff will have to remain engaged with to ensure that it's done in a manner that's worthy of the building that it's going to sit upon. The windows, obviously very important. I could tell you cigar factories are windows, windows, windows. We deal with it all the time, and it's a very important fact that you need to get the windows right so that the character of those industrial buildings stay intact. There was a discussion about metal roofing. I'm not a fan of standing seam roofing. I think that is a contemporary roofing material. I think the metal shingles are interesting. I see those on some residential applications. I think that could be something that could be looked at if it does meet the Florida Building Code. But our normal fallback to metal roofing is a 5V crimp roof, which I think would work appropriately with their underlayment, but it is a more period appropriate roof, particularly for the entrance of the building, which is going to be highly visible. The last thing I wanted to say was something that I saw just at the end of the presentation, and I think it's probably some place where the discussion should start this evening, and that's the extent of the demolition that's going to be necessary in the building, because what I saw was essentially just a vertical wall being supported on both sides by structure, angled structure. So is it the intent that the entire floor system and roofing system is going to be removed from the building? If so, is that necessary? Is an engineering report that shows that that type of extreme demolition is necessary? If it ends up that it is, then that's something that the staff would want to be involved with to ensure that the approach is not only meeting the building code standards, but is done so in a way that does not threaten the building. I can tell you, I've been involved with a lot of these buildings, and I haven't had one rise to the level of needing to remove the entire floor and roofing system in a rehabilitation. So I would proceed with that cautiously and ask if there's supporting documentation for that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will now open up the hearing to public comment. I don't believe I see anybody in the audience, but if you are there, please stand. Okay. Seeing no one, we'll close the public comment period, and now the commissioners will ask questions of the agent. And I will start on my right with Commissioner Boyd this time.
Can we run through some of the comments that were just addressed, starting with the scuppers and gutters systems?
Sure. The roof structure is in really bad shape because of water intrusion over the years, and that's one of the critical issues that we're facing. So the new roof that we're planning is going to be a flat roof with slopes and a new drainage system that is going to be completely independent from anything else that it's being in place right now. So it's going to be a new feature in the building, if you like. So the water is going to be channeled through pipes with overflow drains as well. So we're trying to avoid creating additional penetrations through the historical walls of the building or the envelope of the building. So this will be a completely independent drainage system that, because now we have the space inside, we can channel this in a certain way so it avoids contact with the exterior walls of the building. So that will encompass roof drains plus overflow drains as well.
And those just need to be documented, correct?
Those will be in the construction documents, obviously, yes.
Can you
with full details.
Sure. Can you explain the extent of interior demolition, and do you have supporting documentation for the extent of demolition?
Yes, this has been a long process ongoing with assessment and evaluation of the structure, and it has been determined at a couple of instances, as far as I can remember, the nature of the damages and the failure to comply with code regarding the new structure and the new use that the building is going to have. So considering all these elements, DLW reached out to structural engineers that have recorded and provided documentation indicating the state of the current structure and recommending the demolition and replacement with a new one. When we look at the new structure, that detail that I was trying to show at the end of the presentation kind of address the situation of the integration of the entire structural system together with the brick walls of the envelope of the building. And that's quite an important integral part of the entire process, because it has to be done sequentially, and it has to be done in a certain manner that will allow the integrity of all the structure.
Sure. So understanding the rebuild, but so you have documentation that the full interior needs to be demolished. Has that been submitted to staff?
I don't remember that it was submitted to staff. We have it. But we have it.
Do you have it today?
Not at this moment. I will have to kind of provided that.
Did you have a comment?
Yeah, such a report would be huge and voluminous for this presentation, but I do have one allied question to the structural question we have with respect to demolition. In the end result, when you are done, are we dealing with an existing building shell which was originally conceived as a load-bearing masonry building, a type 3 ordinary building? Will it remain a load-bearing wall, or will it now become a curtain wall to a new internal structure?
It's going to be an interior structure that will embrace the envelope of the building. So the load-bearing characteristic of the envelope is going to be lost a little bit, or lost. So it will be tied back into the new structure that's going to be the actual structure of the building.
Yeah, so it's going to be a curtain wall in many respects.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't understand the word.
Okay. So it will not, outside of holding its own self up, it's having no other structural element added to the 3-dimension of the building.
No.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boyd, did you have other questions for the agent?
Do you have a source or manufacturer for brick that will be brought in as new?
Sorry.
New brick? Do you have a source?
For the brick, yeah. No, not at this moment, but that's a very interesting question, and it has to be addressed together with the owner and some research that has to be done. As you notice, the building has different types of bricks, different colors of bricks, so it's not the same brick that it's the overall component of the envelope walls, but the moldings will be a different brick type or color at least. So we're conscious about that and the importance of it. So it's going to be a process of research and compromise with the owner so we can find the right not manufacturer, but supplier. Probably we can be lucky and find bricks from another place that could be recycled. I know it has been the case in other buildings as well, so that could be something that we can reach out and research.
Same question for the water tower. Do you know who will either provide or create the water tower?
We have reached out to one manufacturer who has a welding company, and but we haven't gone that far yet into the process. So we don't have any shop drawings or any final documentation that we can present to you. But the idea is to find a manufacturer that can build the shell and the basic structure to support the water tower, looking like a traditional water tower would look like. So it's just going to be released of the weight of the water. It will not be there, but the shape of the water tower and the water tank itself, it's the whole purpose of this is to make it look as original as possible, so it becomes an icon of identification of the building, which is obviously will be it's cigar factory with the water tower is one goes with the other. So
can you explain the locations of your proposed awnings?
The projections, you said?
The locations.
The locations
of your new awnings.
Well, the new awnings are limited to 2 entryways, just to bring character to that.
Can you show us on the plan or on
Sure.
an elevation?
I can show it from here. Just allow me a second. It's fine. So, thank you, David. So, they will be limited to this location. There's going to be just one here and one in the rear of the building, which is not shown in the renderings, unfortunately. But it's just to kind of identify the entryways into the bar from the patio and into the building from the back side of the rear parking spaces. So we looked at old photographs of the cigar factory dated back at the beginning of the 20th century, very beginning of the 20th century, and at some point the building had on the second floor this type of canopy, kind of dome design. So we brought that back in. We previously had like a boxy design that was a little bit too much like fighting against the geometry of the building. So it would soften that language significantly and reduce the impact of that. We also changed the color to be more in line and in tune with the colors of the surroundings and the buildings.
I'm going to pass the mic.
Commissioner Taylor.
Bear with me, I got a few questions. The windows, it's been mentioned a couple of times already. That's obviously a predominant aspect of this project, as in with any cigar factory. Or do you, I know you showed us kind of a comparison to another building, but do you have the actual specs on the window you're looking to use? Is it going to be an SDL?
No, we don't have yet committed to a manufacturer or have a specific shop drawings for the windows at this point. What we know is that we want to, or we are going to, maintain based on historic evidence and whatever remains in the building to keep with the original window configuration. As you notice in this detail, which we have seen before, we have a sash window that has a full panel to the bottom, and it has the lights on the top panel. And that is the actual configuration that you can see in old photographs of the building. in the original period. So this type of window is prevalent in the second floor, in the second floor. But the remaining of the upper levels, it's the same panelized lights panel that you see on the top will be at the bottom. So I just tried to bring in this detail because it's a little bit more specific and differentiated from the overall of the windows. But it appears that maybe this was the level that had probably more offices, or for some reason it was the area where it had those larger panels, or one single light at the bottom and multiple lights on the top one. So what I'm trying to say is that we're conscious about the importance of this, and we are committed to research and investigate and provide as close as possible type of windows, because we know it's a very characteristic item in the building.
So my next question is actually for staff real quick. Do we have any pictures that are a little clearer than what we have here in this packet to show what the windows, were they following the arch or not originally?
If I may interject, there is no evidence on site that the pictures from inside the building will always show you that there was a flat lintel from within. And there's no evidence of continuing arched framing. But there's a piece that goes on the exterior, as you will know. It's like kind of a trim that covers that arched portion of the opening. So that's what we are reproducing in our drawings so far.
Ron Vila with Historic Preservation. The preservation staff has worked with numerous cigar factories and the renovation and rehabilitation with adaptive reuses in mind. The cigar factories usually had the geometry of the windows were rectangular. That arched opening on the top that you referred to had some kind of wood paneling up there. The windows themselves were multi-paned over multi-paned in all the research that we do. So the illustration that he showed tonight with a multi-pane over a single glazing on the bottom would not be a direction that we would point him under. But since they're still reviewing the windows, if there's no original windows behind any of the boarded up areas to give us some reference for this particular cigar factory, then he can introduce an appropriate window that might have some cladding on the exterior, but what we're going to look for is the dimensions of the window with the lower sash, the meeting rail, and the stiles to have those dimensional requirements of a cigar factory. So those manufacturers are out there. We've worked with them in the past, and that's the direction we're going to provide for him.
Okay, thank you. The water tower. The question I've got there is, do the structural drawings, or has the structural engineer at this point taken into account what is going on top of the tower as far as a water tower? And my concern here is we don't have a water tower design as of yet, but moving forward, once we do, what are we going to have to incorporate into this design for wind loads, additional structure potentially to hold it up? Just not knowing that, the question is what's currently there as far as structure, has it been checked off on? Is it substantial enough to hold this new water tower?
Yes, the structural drawings have considered the anticipated loads, wind loads, for such a structure. And originally the concern was, and we decided not to build the water tower, not even as a void element, but after considerations from the engineer and going back to analysis on the loads and the wind loads and etc. and the potential, not the potential, but the proposed design for reinforcing of the existing concrete structure, it was determined that we could move on forward to that in that regard, meaning we could include the water tower as we have it designed. So the answer to your question would be yes, it has been considered by the engineer of record.
So to clarify, there won't have to be any added structure to what's there currently that you would actually see to hold it up?
What is going to be resolved is the pinning of the spalling concrete and enlargement of the section.
Okay.
Minimally, but like about 2 inches or so with the new material that will kind of jacket the entire structure. It will be all run at the same facade plane, but it will provide the structure with added capabilities to support the weight.
Okay. So it'll be encased, basically.
Yeah.
It looked like there were some bolts, through bolts or something that's going through from the floor system structure back out to the outside of the brick walls. Do you have any sort of detail on those brackets or nuts or?
Right. So this is the detail we're talking about, and it comprises what you see here in both sides of the same detail is the brick envelope of the Wilden portion of the detail, and the inside is the new floor ceiling assembly and wood structure that will be developed. So from within, there's going to be a perimeter ring beam, if you like. There's going to be attached to the entire length of the facade. And every 4 feet, there's going to be a penetration through the building, exterior envelope of the building. And there's going to be a flat plate of metal with these anchors back or bolts back that will compress that portion of the facade back and tie it back into or together with the interior structure. So in order to do that, some of the brickwork on the exterior will have to be retired at that portion where the plate is going to be, and then we place back those bricks once the work is completed. So it's kind of a very careful process that will have to be also in tune with the underpinning. We never mentioned about the underpinning of the structure, but it's also part of the process. And the underpinning it needed to be sequenced in a way that will alternate different portions of the building at different times. So there's a cycle of running these underpinnings around the building to consolidate all the walls. And then together with that will be this detail developed. And this goes at every floor and in the entire perimeter of the building. It's a continuous kind of pinning system, if you like, from the interior structure that ties back the entire envelope of the building together. Because right now, looking at this demolition that we're planning, these walls will become loose if they don't have a skeleton or a structure to tie back in. So the interior structure is designed to support wind loads and movement, and also the tension from those walls.
Okay, so the bracket's going to be covered up, basically. That's really what I was trying to. Have you picked out a type of coping? You mentioned the flat roof material. But as far as, is there going to be a coping or anything? And you answered the question on the scuppers and the gutters, but
right.
Is there going to be any sort of, like your front elevation showed a metal coping
yeah,
in the original, or in the pictures now, what's it going to be once it's?
Sure. Yeah, it's going to be a metal cladding coping around the perimeter of the building. Fibertite is a very reliable material, and we're going to do that to the interior of the building. So the function of this coping is going to be physically attach this membrane to the borders, and also aesthetic. So we want to minimize the expression of that metal as it embraces the capping of the parapet walls, because the primary interest is to expose the brick as it is. So Fibertite can assist us with as it has been in other projects we have been doing, to minimize the visual impact of those attachments, if you like, no? So so we are confident that we can get a nice detail where the coping can be reduced to a fine line and the brick molding can gain prominence. That's the direction we would like to go.
Okay. That's all I have.
Commissioner Myers?
So the entire interior is going to come out, right? And then you're going to brace the walls. Having worked on these kinds of buildings before, there is a belief that people built things really well in the 100 years ago, 120 years ago, and frequently that is not the case. So this building, I am sure it really needs, or rather I expect that it probably does need this amount of care, and I appreciate the passion that you seem to be bringing forward to this. I wanted to ask about the structure for the water tower. In your rendering, it appears to be wood, is that correct? Or is it?
No,
it's going to be steel.
It's going to be steel.
Okay.
Metal.
And the stairs, the exterior stairs are completely open, right? And they seem to be somewhat undetailed at this point. Do you have an intent for those? Will they be more industrial? How will they refer to like an industrial, an exterior stair of that period without actually trying to mimic it?
Okay. Well, it doesn't show very well, but the idea was to actually leave a bare structure exposed with the kind of the same type of cast iron expression like element. So that was the aim to the design. We refrained from adding any decorations at all. We might probably, though, consider the railings as probably a potential part of the stairs designs, where we can probably include some decorative elements. But decoration should be understood as industrial elements, not decorative moldings or of any kind. But maybe a more elaborate design on the railings could assist with this purpose. But the objective was to have a bare, industrial-looking structure painted in black, the same color that is typically used in all other areas, resembling that aspect. So I think maybe the industrial expression sometimes relies on the joints, how the elements will be joined. So probably we can certainly develop some details in the joints. Maybe they will not be functional, but they can display like the bolt and nut kind of expression, and we can certainly develop something of that nature as part of the stair design. It's probably a very good idea to make it a little bit more part of that feel of industrial look.
Thank you very much. That's the answer that I wanted to hear.
Okay.
And we are lucky here in Tampa that we have fabricators who make, for example, steel tanks. And so I don't see your water tower as being difficult from a fabrication point. And I applaud your trying to replace it and replacing it with a steel supporting structure. I think that I have no other real questions on the exterior. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sutton.
Thank you very much. I do have a couple questions, sir. If I can, let's backtrack for a moment to the question about windows. Since you've had the benefit in your team to be able to go crawling all around through this building to find out its various features and foibles, have you found any existing windows in place still, or are they all boarded up and gone?
Not really. I have found more interesting information in old engravings and photographs of historical research from, we got this research from, I can't remember exactly the name of the researcher, but he went over all the cigar factories in Tampa and portrays a lot of images and old photographs. You can tell they're all because of the context rather than the building itself. So you see a car or something that resembles that this is all outdated. The interesting thing that we found from inside was that relationship that we were describing between the inside flat lintel and the expression of the arch outside, which is lost right now. The windows that are in place are completely rectangular. They cannot be seen from exterior because they have been closed or blocked with those dark plywood sheets. But if you retire those sheets, you will see that there's a mismatch between the horizontal lintel expression of the current windows and what it should have been the original. So I spent some time looking at what the options would be with trying to figure out if it was legitimate, the windows that they have in place. So I think I identified that the windows in place right now are not the original ones. Also because they are just one light above, one light below. It's not like that. And we have seen pictures of older period, I mean from the period or closer to the period of construction that shows us that there were multiple lights on the windows. So
I would think that having in your hands and at your disposal a historical photo record of similar buildings here in the Tampa area would guide you very distinctly in the selection, or at least in the apportioning of windows on the various levels. I can understand how there might be a different rhythm of window on the first floor versus the second floor versus the third floor, and that pulling that from its contemporary record would give you the guidance and the information that you need to work with staff and the Secretary of Interior in order to select the appropriate windows. As an example, I remember many years ago it was Pella who not built the original windows, but built the windows for the Willard Hotel renovation in Washington, D.C. It was their flagship product at the time. I believe they still do have those monumental panned aluminum wood windows still available in their record. So there are people who can build windows of that scale. You just have to tell them what they have to build in the first place. So that's a big deal. I think that record should be your guidance. There should be no question as to what kind of window went where at this point in time.
I'm sorry, what kind of window
there should be no question as to what style of window should be going in what particular location on this building at this time. That should already have been fleshed out, I would think. I look at your elevations and your stairs, exterior stairs. I understand where they're coming from. I understand why they're there. And just for the record, because we have limited exterior elevations at our disposal right now, because this is very schematic in its nature, am I to absolutely understand that the north stair assembly and the south stair assembly, the west stair assembly, are going to be substantially similar?
They are very similar to each other.
And they're basically going to be steel in the vein of cast iron, simplified, a contemporary addition to a much older structure. On that cast iron business, I believe it's a coloration that you're going to be going after, black, of a certain blackness, some sort of color. Things painted black in Tampa don't last very long. I can show you any one of a number of powder-coated aluminum railings and castings where that finish is just crumbling. I can also show you any one of a number of painted black elements that are faded to gray even because of the harsh sun. What you finish in black on this project needs to be very, very seriously looked at in terms of its chemistry and what actually produces that color, because the sun's going to beat it to death. And what happens on the north side won't be the same thing
Commissioner
that happens
Sutton,
on the south side.
excuse me, Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the legal department. The color palette, the staff will address that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, I understand that. I'm just discussing at this point a particular problem with the idea of black and iron in Florida.
I have something to say about that.
Yes, sir.
We all mentioned black because of the blackness of the color, but according to my previous experience, it's never black. It's a blend of green. It's a very dark green that typically is what it is recommended, at least according to my previous experience on buildings from the 19th century and so on. According to chromatography studies, it was a prevalent that the darker green tones, almost closer to black, but were a variation of the green, were used broadly, particularly in the Spanish colonies. And the reason that they used to do that, particularly in Cuba, was because they wanted to express the nature of old bronze, oxidized. So that was the intention behind that, and it was prevalently done throughout every 19th century building in Havana, Cienfuegos, all these cities in Cuba. And I would not be surprised if that would have been the intention here as well. So we can certainly look at that, and if you read in the notes or guidance that we said there, we recommend to do a study on chromatography of the original stairs or cast iron elements. It may probably be an exaggeration. We can only probably rely on tradition and look at that way. But the good way of doing it will be to do a study, identify the original colors that were there, and then we can bring them back in.
And that is something that still has to be done at this time.
Yeah.
Okay. In a related matter to the classical color representation for this building are shutters. I understand the nature of the shutters, but I could see from your elevations that although virtually every window on this building at every level has a knuckle for shutters, you are presenting only shutters on the ground, the main floor.
Yes.
Are you at all considering shutters on the upper levels?
We were originally, but in previous conversations with Ron, or I don't exactly remember if it was Danny's, we had a suggestion that we can do it in the main floor. I might probably be wrong at that now, but I do have a recollection that we discussed that, because we did show originally shutters all over the place. But the issue was that we were having too many conditions where the shutters would have to remain halfway open. And that was creating kind of a conflict in terms of how to keep them open, adding an additional type of bracket or something, or hooks. But the hooks will be reasonable if they are operable. But in this case, they won't be operable because of the function of the building and the actual practicality of having them operable. So I think at some point along the process, I reached out to probably either Ron or Dennis, and I kind of present the question if we required to have them all over the building, or we could choose a particular area where we could maintain them. And I think the outcome of that conversation was to keep them in the second floor. But Ron, you can probably attest to that. If it was you, I don't remember exactly now.
That was going to be my next pass here is the staff. Not necessarily how did this decision come about, but I'm more concerned about how the shutter question situation on this building is suitably resolved against the Secretary's guidelines for rehabilitation of existing historic buildings when we have indication that there were shutters on all levels, and we are now producing this renovation with only rehabilitation with only shutters on one level.
Ron, I'll handle that. I think if you refer to page 2 of your staff report, you'll see a historic photograph of the structure that does not indicate that there were shutters on every window of the structure. Often you found the hinges on every window, but the shutters were just placed usually in areas that there were security concerns or that they were looking to control light. I've myself not seen a masonry cigar factory structure that had shutters on every window. I also think that there were shutters that were stored on site and sometimes were put up in storms. These were operable shutters. They were not something that were decorative, so they were very functional. But I do believe that the reference to the shutters that are on the project are correct, and I do believe that they adhere to the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation.
At the very least, they're consistent with other such facilities throughout the city of Tampa as well, too. Because I remember, if I'm not incorrect, that a majority of these circumstances, the shutters were provided on the ground and main floor levels, predominantly for security purposes. Last question, sir. New doors. Let us discuss new entrance doors that you have, particularly for your main entrance into your lobby, as well as your entrances to and from your public areas for like your pool deck or from your bar area or your restaurant areas to the outside. Have you made a selection of what those doors should be looking like, and how do they fit in with the monumentality of the cigar building?
Sure. The idea is to replicate or utilize the expression of the windows also on those doors, meaning that they will have multiple lights. It's going to be a glazed panel with multiple lights, and they will be swinging doors. In the case of the main entry door to the building, it's going to be automatically operated, but it's going to be a swing door, outswing door in this case. And it will carry the same expression that we were discussing before. So we're talking about multiple lights, glass panels with stiles and ledgers and so forth. That basically is the answer to your question, I think.
Are they also going to be more monumental in their scale too, or are they going to be more conventional commercial door?
No, not really, because the size of, I mean, it's a matter of scale.
Mhm.
It doesn't make sense to create a grand opening where first off, there's no such a space to do that. What we have done is to adapt to the existing openings that we are dealing with. So there's no opportunity actually to do that type of thing. Also, from the interior, although we are not discussing much about the interior, but from the interior we would like to express the brickwork. I'm sorry. We would like to express the lintel expression from within as well. So that is actually conducing the design action to look at the original opening sizes. That has been quite an ordeal because we need to comply with certain requisites for exit, egress, etc.
Mhm.
So it has been very challenging as you connect those stairs with the inside of the building. So it has been a challenging situation. But finally we got to a point where we designed, if you analyze those elevations from within the stair towers onto the buildings, every floor has a different door type because the openings are different at every level.
Mhm.
So the width varies, the shape of the opening varies. So we decided to adapt to that and not break everything and just create a standard type of door.
And it doesn't help so much that in many of these locations, the doors that were there or the windows that were there being repurposed for doors were utilitarian in their nature. They didn't have a grand proportion to begin with. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
So there are a number of things that we have not covered that are on this list, and I'd just like to go through those really quick just to knock them off the list. The first one is, there's a notation here about balconies on the south elevation. I don't recall seeing any projections. Are you indeed incorporating some sort of mini balconies or anything like that off of any of the elevations?
No, this is an existing condition in the building that separates the water tower from the main facade, and it has like a little tiny balcony looking with a railing, with an existing railing. So all we're doing is to keep that intact and provide some sort of a railing.
Where is that? Because I don't remember seeing that. Is that in one of your rendered views?
Sure, I'll show you.
Oh, that right there.
That, exactly.
Okay.
Are these little
yeah,
boxes
it's hard
that
to
you
see in any imagery that we have. Okay.
Right.
So those are existing pieces, and you're adding railings to those?
There are existing railings,
Okay.
but they are all bent and in really bad condition, rusting, etc. So our plan is to have a clear, transparent railing looking like, so it's kept just as a...
So it'll be glass, not metal.
Right, and to the back of those openings, you have an to the balconies, in the main building structure, you have spaces with openings, existing openings. So what we're doing is we're just placing in a layer of glass as a see-through element. So it's going to be more like a decorative element, taking advantage of the existing openings that we have there. They're very narrow, long, thin, tall openings. So we're not sorry?
I'm sorry. Are the balconies intended to be occupied, or
No.
are they are just defunct remnants? They're just...
It's just a remnants of what the building was.
Okay.
They cannot be operable because there's no size for anything. And if you look at it, the interior relationship is with the guest room. So there's no way you can have a guest room with a balcony that small.
Okay, all right.
So
I understand that. A sign package. I didn't see any indication of signage except for that monument sign that's on the rendered there. Are there
Yes.
any other signs on the building that are going to indicate the property?
no, we are only relying on the monumental sign, and maybe there's going to be some lettering on the canopies indicating probably the name of the bar or the name of the hotel plus the name of the bar, something of that nature. But basically that's gonna be it.
Okay.
Sure.
You indicate in this rendering, this was another component that I actually had, was you had discussed at the beginning of the presentation that this would be your main entry and it would have this patio area that you can see next to the water tower structure.
Mhm.
It looks like a trellis.
It is.
And do you have details for that and what the
Yes.
materials are going to be?
Yes, let me just, there you go. I think it's better, David, if you pull up the CAD file, I'm sorry, the PDF. You have it? Oh, yeah. Can you pull it?
Which one are you looking for?
The architectural set? There you go. That's it.
Rotate that.
Thank you. So, we were talking about the trellis. It's funny.
You have it in the rendering there, but
Well, that's, the main idea was to have this trellis design with bold brackets in the same color of all the other elements we have in dark green, as we were referring to, color resembling the cast iron relationship. So basically it's composed of composite pillars of posts that raise up and sustain this trellis design, and the quality of it will reside more in the bracketing of all these elements and having those bypassing kind of bold knot connections in the posts, which are not shown here. I don't think they are. I think I had a different perspective of that.
so while you're looking for that,
Maybe if I use my phone.
the materiality of the components, it's metal bracketing and
Wood,
wood.
timber,
Okay.
the expression of heavy timber
Okay.
in dark tones.
All right. Did that. We briefly went over your hardscape plans for this. What are the particular landscape materials that will be going in? I do remember seeing a few things in your renderings, but are we talking about all low shrubs and that sort of thing, or are there any elements such as trees that are going in, ornamental trees or things like that within the project?
We had a couple of comments that restrained the number of trees and the sizing of the trees and whatnot. So it was kept basically to shrubbery around the building and certain areas where there's a palm tree or something like that, but it was reduced significantly from what it was at the beginning.
Okay.
So typically what we're doing is that we're incorporating the brick pavers as the more prevalent material throughout the exterior of the building.
Okay.
And preserving the sidewalks, and the pool is going to be treated differently because it's a brand new element. It's more festive, if you like. So it's kind of a differentiated from the rest of the building.
Okay. Could you pull up your site plan, please, the PD plan?
The PD plan?
Yeah, the PD site plan.
I'm sorry, I have too many sheets here.
That's okay. I understand you have a lot of information.
Let's see.
If you could pull that down just a little bit, just you're good on the Zoom. No, it's great on the Zoom to be zoomed in so I can see it, so we can all see it.
You want to zoom in more?
Can you zoom? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then we can't read it. Can you point to where all the mechanical pieces of equipment are and how they're screened or fenced in?
Okay, so the mechanical.
And that would include pool equipment as well and transformer.
Right.
Okay.
So that's, we're going to have the utilities in this area behind the pool, and all that section will be screened out, so it's not visible, broadly from eyesight.
Okay.
So the same will happen to the HVAC equipment that is going to be in between the ADA parking bay and the other parking on the other side. So you can see that there's some shrubbery around it. Plus, I think in our plan is shown more in detail. We have the fence, not the fence, sorry, but
a wall
enclosure or
Yep.
screens that
Okay.
are determined to be at a certain height and solid block of visuals towards those elements.
Okay. Is that the only mechanical unit on this project, or are there any up
No,
on the rooftops
There
anywhere?
will be smaller units on the rooftop for the vents from the units. These are going to be VRF units.
Okay.
They tend to be a lot smaller than the larger ASUs that you're accustomed to see. So the entire system is fragmented into many units, and we are taking them to the height of the parapet or slightly higher of the parapet, so it will not be visible from the eyesight around the building. And also they are located to the center of the structure, so visually you don't get the same impact because of the parapets and the distance between the parapet
Right.
and where the units will be located.
Are there any other pieces of equipment on the roof, either the main roof or any of the lower roofs, besides those? You're going to have, let me just back up for a minute. You're going to have food service components, correct? You'll have a restaurant in this, or a bar?
There's going to be a prep area, but there will not be a chimney or a type of a
Exhaust.
wood exhaust or anything like that. Everything, as far as that's being coordinated with the ownership, is going to be prepacked food served on the site, mainly drinks and snacks and things like that.
Okay.
So it's kind of a bar-oriented concept.
Okay.
So there will be no need for an
Okay.
exhaust hood.
Then I want to go back to doors and windows, because I just want to satisfy the discussion. Do you have any imagery of the intended doors for the other openings besides the main entry, besides the original main entry?
Talking
Besides
about-
the rendering, because the rendering's not very clear.
Let's see.
I myself.
I'm trying to look at an elevation, so.
Yeah, for me, I think the more important one is the one that now is becoming the main entry, which is at the water tower trellis element. And I understand the limitations with openings and using that exactly. So, is that the intent of the look of the actual doors
In
that are going in?
proportions, yes, but we are missing the lights.
So that's why I asked, do you have any images, cut sheets of an intended look?
I have from the handy from the exit doors from the bars that are on maybe on an interior elevation or elevations. Sorry, I'm sorry taking that much time. I don't think I have one handy now.
I just want to give you the
It
opportunity
might
to.
probably be seen on one of the perspectives, but no. only thing I can show you probably, I know you don't want to see a perspective per se, but it's the closest I can get to that. And that would be,
And that's also the intent for that,
that is the intention.
that other main entry door.
Right, that would be the language we were trying to pursue.
Okay, all
So
right.
it's a multiple lights with a side light also converging with the same number of lights of the main door panel. So that's basically the intention.
And are those narrow style or medium style or heavy style based on the fact that you have to deal with the current codes?
That would be an interesting question. I would say we would like to have bolder styles rather than very thin styles. That would look more contemporary. We would prefer, even if it comes to narrowing down the glass, excuse me, narrowing down a little bit the panel, the glass panel, it's worth doing because it's more in line with the.
Understood. Okay. And then regarding the windows, I would like to point out that in our packet, and I don't know what you have, but we actually have two images. One is an enlargement of the first from Robertson and Fresh that says no date. However, when you look at the vehicles beyond, this is more than likely from the 30s or 40s. And when you look at the enlarged image, the main windows on the main floor appear to be a single over a single light. So I would encourage, as my fellow Commissioner Sutton has encouraged, that you do a thorough research of the evidence that you can find. And you know, just be, I think you're on the right track, but there definitely were times in the cigar factories when these lower rooms were used for business activities beyond, you know, the comings and goings of the materials and the finished products. So especially the front of house where this main door was, more than likely had some receiving rooms and things like that. So the 1-over-1 light makes sense to me from that historic perspective. So I think you're there, just a little bit more research maybe. So I think that's it for questions, and I believe you get 5 minutes now for rebuttal. So anything you'd like to say?
Well, I'd first like to thank the owner and DLW for giving me the opportunity to be in this project. It's really exciting for me to be part of this experience. It personally touches me because of the history of the building and my personal background. So it's a little bit of even emotional for me being part of this experience. So I remain committed to getting to the best results possible that we can develop for this building. I want to thank you for your time listening to this presentation, and I will look forward to continue working with you in relation to the windows and any other elements in the building that may require special attention. So I'd like to thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. This now closes the public hearing, and the commissioners will discuss and make a decision. So anyone want to bring up a particular point or certain matters that we should entertain before entertaining a motion?
I think this project is proceeding in a very straightforward and method. It's actually going where it wants to go. I'm sure the parties involved all recognize that this is going to be a very high-profile renovation. I mean, this is in the heart of West Tampa, the heart of NoHo for all practical purposes. It will be noticed, so any misstep is going to be well noticed and talked about. But I think this project is well formed and well on its way. I have no other further question or comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I have no comment.
Commissioner Taylor or Meyer?
No comments.
I have none.
I too think that this project has, I just want to say how well put together the presentation was, and as someone who has lived with a very passionate person who believes in historic preservation as well, and would just love to have listened and seen all the things that you presented tonight. It's amazing to get this quality of expertise at the dais. My concern would be that the report from the structural engineer be entered into the record. If it has not been presented to staff, it absolutely should be presented and put into record. Anything that has to do with the rehabilitation in terms of the plan, and it looks like you have it fairly well documented in your drawings, so I think you're covered there, needs to be entered into the record as a matter of fact. I would certainly hope the rest of the team is as dedicated and fully vetted as you are, because I do feel like there's something that comes from you in your presentation today that will make this a successful project. I agree, this is a very high profile location. You have the Armory before you, and I mean physically before you on that same drive, that was highly anticipated and came together very well and brought community back to this area of Tampa, and I look forward to this doing the same thing. So there's that. Again, just looking at the historic record and learning and gleaning what you can from it. Other than that, I'm very hopeful for this project and this historic record. So thank you very much. Anyone want to entertain a motion? Only if anybody else feels strongly for a condition. I think the matter of the record, the presentation of the structural report, is important as a matter of record.
Commissioner Sutton, can you turn your mic on, please?
So is it off
They
again?
can.
I think some of this has to be some kind of.
Let's do that. I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC 21-185 for the property located, oh Lord, at 1202 North Howard Avenue, with the following conditions: that reports for structural integrity and reports for window integrity be submitted to the record. That is all I have. Oh, yes, because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines for the rehabilitation of historic properties.
For the following reasons.
For the following reasons. The structure in question is one of our premier historic cigar factories. It's unique in itself. And needs to be preserved.
It's on page 4. It's under the, if you want to start over, you can certainly start over.
Excuse me, Commissioners, may I just interject for one moment?
Yes.
Staff would recommend that as part of the submission of the engineering report, a complete shoring plan in detail be presented to staff as part of the permitting document to ensure that the structure's stability is ensured through the project.
It looked like they had that in those presentation drawings, though. So
They are.
was that not given to?
That's fine if it, that I didn't get a chance to review that today.
Okay.
And I think it takes a more detailed review to ensure that is secured.
Did you get all that, Commissioner? Would you like someone else to try, or? You
Let
wanna
someone
try?
else take a shot at this
Okay.
one.
Would anyone else like to entertain a motion?
I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC 21-185 for the property located at 1202 North Howard Avenue with the following conditions. I missed what the last one was.
Oh, the shoring plan, the complete shoring plan.
That a
and-
shoring plan is submitted to the drawings and documents to staff. And the following items are approved by staff. A detailing of exterior staircases, door and window specifications, final brick specifications, the new water tower manufacturer and specifications, the final sign package, all trellis details, final lighting package, and roofing materials. Because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards for the following reasons. That the historic character of the property shall be retained and preserved.
I second that motion.
Do you understand, as the owner agents, do you understand the conditions that were proposed here in the motion?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So all in favor, please say aye and indicate so by raising your hands.
Aye.
Aye.
Seeing no nays, the motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gonna go there again. Don't ask questions. I just don't know.
But we're not going to change it. We maybe update the doors and everything. But yeah, the warehouse will stay. We're not demoing that.
Okay, great. And then could you bring up, I think one of the things we're kind of interested is maybe a site plan and just talk about like the hardscaping or like the hardscaping around the building and talking about maybe any of the scoring patterns for any
Sure.
paving and that kind of stuff.
Actually, let's bring that up on the